normal speaking volumes.
Normal volumes. How's your headset?
Fine.
But the analytics, just a little fine. It's very fine. Stop doing this up.
Okay. And we'll pull up the show notes in my phone.
Okay, are we ready?
No.
Yes, we are.
You hitting the record button already?
Yes, I already did.
What? Oh.
Yeah.
Hello.
So don't say the things that you were going to say.
What's the things I'm going to say? Because we're talking all today.
Welcome to Untitled Car Project, show 42.
The answer to life.
I'm Rob Spring.
I'm Grant Gonzalez.
Today on the show, we have the Gooz. Do you like the Gooz?
Yeah.
I think it's funny. Antonio Guzman joins the show today.
Hello.
Talk about project cars and being a newbie to the scene. So we're excited about that. Thanks for listening. And do us a big old favor, would you? Give us a follow.
Hit that like button.
Hit the like button. Follow the show on whatever listening app you have, whether that's Spotify or Apple or
Radio.
FM player even. I don't know. Whatever it is. Do that and also share it with a friend. That would be really cool.
Antonio, have you checked out our show lately?
You're going to share it with Antonio?
Yeah, right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
You should
Here's
do
our-
that.
Here's our link.
You should send him a link.
Okay.
Okay. That would be huge if you would share that. Just go ahead and text it to a big group of friends. And today on the show, we're going to talk about some Vipers and what's out there, what they cost, what you should and shouldn't pay for one. And that all depends on how deep your pocketbook is. What else are we going to talk about? Project cars.
Project cars, getting into racing and getting into wrenching.
There you go.
Yeah, though it's the start of it.
The cars you should look for when you first get into it, what you should probably stay away from. And I don't know, maybe we'll talk about some more racing things, racing opportunities.
Yeah, all sounds great.
All sounds good. Very good. Very cool. Yeah. All right, well, let's start. Where do we want to start? How about start with finding your first project car, Antonio? So how long have you been doing this? About 2 years now?
About 2 to 3 at this point, yeah.
You're coming into your third season.
Yes.
I think.
We're talking about for project and racing, correct? Or are we talking about wrenching?
Yeah. Well,
Wrenching's been longer than that.
Wrenching's been longer than that, but in terms of just, well, even then, because if you think about it, we started racing the first car that I bought, which was a Ford Focus. So, and that was within 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's been like a
that's
total
the first time I remember seeing you out there was in the
yeah.
Focus.
It's been on and off. It's been consistent for now 2 to 3 years, but overall it's probably been about a 5-year thing at this point.
Okay.
A combination of wrenching and autocrossing.
Okay, so on the Focus, because that was a fairly new car when you got it, yeah? How much work did you have to do on that?
At the time, none. The
Yeah.
car was brand new. The only thing we had to worry about was really just the transmission. That was really the big thing because it has the dual clutch transmission. So that's what made it difficult to kind of just see when it would give out, when it would not give out, because I was still so new to driving that car at the time.
Sure.
And when I had researched at the time purchasing that vehicle, there were many schools of thought of how you're supposed to drive that car. Some people said you granny the car, so that way the dual clutches would engage without them shifting rough. But then there was a whole other school of thought where people said, no, you drive it like you stole it. You just got to put that car into gear and just go.
Right.
That way the clutches slam into place instead of just rubbing against each other.
Which is where the idea from Grant came, well, why don't you just autocross the car? By autocrossing it, you're going to have to be putting that car into gear.
Right.
And it was something I was hesitant on at the time, but I was like, whatever. What's the worst that can happen? You know?
Yeah.
So
Go use the car.
exactly.
Yeah.
Even though it's a passenger car, it's not.
Yeah, not
it's
exactly built for
it's
racing.
not a race car. It's not even the ST. It's literally just it's a daily sedan. It's the
Right.
economy sedan.
With the automatic.
Yeah,
You still have that car?
still do.
Yeah.
It just cracked 80,000 miles yesterday.
Nice.
When I got it, it's a 2014. I had it with approximately 22,000 miles or so, and it was a 2-owner car. The first person who owned it was, my understanding was it was this grandma, so she basically just took it from point A to point B, didn't really drive it very hard. She then gave it to her grandson. Her grandson hated that car because it had no get up and go, so after about a couple of months, traded that in and got a Mazda, I think it was like a Mazda Speed 3 or a Mazda 3.
Something. I think it was a 3.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then it came to me.
Gotcha.
And at this point, my goal is, because the transmission has been getting pretty wonky and it has been diagnosed by a Ford dealer at this point that the clutches are going bad. If I can make it to 150,000 miles without having to swap the clutches, that would be a win.
Yeah.
Because this is the other
Huge win.
this is the other thing for our listeners is, and we've talked about like how the clutches wear out. Is on the automatics. Most people don't make it to what 50,000, 60,000 miles before a transmission needs to be replaced.
That's the crazy part. Is like when I was talking about how you're supposed to drive that car. There's so many different experiences that people have. No experience is perfect, right? You go on these forums and you hear about people who are like, oh yeah, I went to like 100, 200,000 miles, never did anything to the clutches. And some of these people, as far as I know, they never even mentioned that they swapped the dual clutch transmission fluid that's in there.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's super common.
right, you hear that.
Wow.
Then you hear the people who they couldn't make it, like Grant said, 20,000, 30,000 miles, and they're already out of transmission.
Yeah.
So it's a weirdly unique thing. I don't know how to describe it. And
I think that's out there for all the cars, though. I mean, as far as people that, like you said, some get 200,000 miles, never have an issue. Others can't get 50,000 miles in their cars in the shop all the time.
Yeah.
right.
Was it built on a Friday or a Monday?
Exactly. Well, and that's interesting that you mentioned that, because whenever I've had to answer questions to a Ford dealer, or if I had to like put in the VIN to a decoder for parts, right? It will sometimes ask me like, oh, what month and year this was built in. So maybe that did matter.
Yeah.
The only thing I do know, of course, is the vehicle was built in Michigan, but it was built maybe on a certain fleet of them. Maybe they had a different problem.
Certain run, yeah.
And the only reason I was that attention was brought to me once was I had gone to a tire shop to get tires put onto it, and apparently the guy had told me that you can have multiple Ford Focuses. They could all be the same thing, all be SEs or even just S's. Mm-hmm. They may have in the door the sticker that shows you the PSI. They could all be different.
Interesting.
Apparently,
Yeah.
And maybe that has something to do with the way they were built or who was the lead at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Could have been the contractor
Well, and
at the time who got the tires from it.
Sure.
Could be that too.
Because the car came stock with Continentals.
Yeah.
Now it has, now of course it uses Yokohamas now, because that tire has been fantastic for me. But maybe you're right. Maybe that was a contract thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of the month to month, didn't they switch in those Ford Focus? They went from a dry clutch to a wet clutch system? Or was that an update?
I don't know, because I've heard stories about the wet clutch, but I'm thinking that might have been only in Europe. I never hear. It's always been a dry clutch as far as I know. And that's why, of course...
I don't think there's many cars in the U.S. that use a wet clutch.
No. I think the only wet clutch cars that brands, I think, would have been what? Audi, maybe Volkswagen? German brands? Probably. But as far as Ford, no. I mean, because the whole point of the Ford Focus with that transmission was they were... Basically, the way they marketed was, if you like the comforts of a manual without having the shift, here's this.
Yep.
I thought it was, and fuel economy.
And fuel economy was a big thing.
Yeah.
But with that being said, because the car was such a economy car, you probably would have to economize the transmission.
Yeah.
And dry clutching is probably the way. It was probably the way that they were thinking was the best way to go.
Absolutely. So let's get back to the clutch then. And you being new to working on cars and stuff like that, what about, finding a wrecked one with a clutch or a transmission that's maybe only 50,000 miles on it and just swapping it out yourself?
It's really funny. I didn't think of that idea until Grant had pointed it out to me when the transmission was starting to fail.
Yeah.
So
you're surrounded by enough people to help.
Yeah.
That we can make that happen.
no, for sure. And that was the thing, was when the transmission was starting to kind of falter, which was at about
55.
15,000 miles ago or so,
Yeah.
maybe. They basically, the Ford guy was really nice, but he was just like, yeah, the clutches are going bad. It's not the TCM, which, for those of you who don't know, the transmission control module is basically the computer that helps shift the car.
Yeah.
Because because the whole thing is just run by a computer. You don't get an option to shift it. So they had said, okay, well then here is what you can do, and here's the price. It ended up being like $5,000. Something insane like that.
And with as much as those cars are, that just totals it right off the bat.
Well,
And
yeah, it would.
Also, just to even give you more context, that car had already been in 2 accidents. I think at this point, they had already put in like $8,000 in just parts.
Oh.
So now I'm adding, and then of course, I had a timing cover gasket that failed around 50, which was covered. I had a service contract and that was covered, and that's all fine and dandy. But in terms of just major repairs, right? I paid $10,000 for that car.
Yeah.
I'm already at this point where this vehicle is totally...
Yeah, once it breaks down, it's like, you have to weigh that. Can you fix it yourself or with help, reasonably?
Yes.
Or is it time to just move on to the next car?
And that was the thing. At the time, I was contemplating on just getting another car. But Grant had pointed out that if the car did fail, like you just said.
Right.
Go to like a a junkyard. Go grab a transmission.
Yep.
Rebuild that one.
Yep.
And even let's say if I don't rebuild it properly, that still gives me the experience that I can try to rebuild the transmission from scratch. Right. That's a really good project to do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Then take out the transmission that's faulty, put that one in.
Yep.
And then see if it runs. Which, of course, the other factor we'd have to do, which I've been able to do a little more homework on it, once you get that transmission put in, you have to then go through the specific program to get the transmission to play nicely with, of course, the power control module, which at the time I didn't think you could get access to because most of that stuff is locked down and key by Ford. But I guess some people have pointed out that there are some third-party ones that are successful that you can use.
Yeah.
But overall,
you can get it done even if you just had to take it to Ford and say, "Hey, you need to reprogram this thing."
Exactly.
Yeah. Make the part numbers happy.
Exactly, and that's something that even the Ford guy I talked to him afterwards. He was like, "Yeah, if you do it yourself, bring it in. It'll cost you this much, and we'll reprogram it for you."
Let me expand on it a little.
That's a good way to. I'll get to you.
Yeah.
That's a great way to go. Not only for the learning experience of rebuilding one, because why not? But it's less expensive than $5,000 for a new transmission, and I don't know, maybe you're into it $2,000. Then you've lengthened the life of your car by maybe another 80,000 miles.
Yeah. And I think at this point, if I did the math ish properly, so $5,000 would have been or so. These are just ballparks. I don't have the papers in front of me. I think it was about $5,000 if I got it done at that particular Ford dealership.
Yep.
So if I would have done it out of pocket, I think I pretty much would have only saved on the labor because the clutches themselves, the clutch pack, I think it's like $3,000.
Oh no shit!
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
So it must be a pretty quick job if their labor is only another $2,000 plus all the gaskets and all the other pieces.
From what we found, it's not a quick job.
No, it's not. I mean,
how are they getting away with only $5,000?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I've watched videos of guys who've done it.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't say it's complicated. It's more of you need to make sure you follow a very precise amount of directions, right?
Yeah.
Which then again, that's common anything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're building a Lego set. You need to make sure you follow the directions, or else you're going to end up with a wonky, model. But at the end of the day, with this one, there's very particular things that need to be done, and if you miss a step, it screws over the whole thing.
Sure. So that's why I wanted to touch on that one. That was also one of the original reasons we brought up buying a transmission, rebuilding it, redoing the clutch set outside of the car, was because we saw it was so labor intensive to get in through that.
Not to mention, I forgot, there's one other thing that I failed to mention too. You need to get a specialty tool to take the actual clutch out.
Oh,
Exactly.
absolutely, sure.
And so one of the things we brought up to attention, I was told Antonio at the time, was like, if you have it like on an engine stand or have it on a bench and start rebuilding that transmission, get the clutches all installed into the transmission. When your clutches fail in your car, instead of taking the transmission out whatever time it is to figure all the bugs and all the tricks and whatever, you have something good to go. It's then pop in, pop out, send in a repair. You save
You save quite a bit of time.
Which full circle,
Yeah.
some people are probably thinking, why the hell would you buy that car if it's got all these problems? Okay, fine, bet.
Cost.
The problem was I had very specific parameters of what I wanted for my first car, and in general, just my car buying philosophy in general. It was passed down to me by my old man. I don't buy foreign cars. I buy American-built cars. They have to be built in America.
Okay.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
And what we ended up doing before I bought the Ford Focus, we did some research on like pretty much every American sedan that was available at the time. Some SUVs, but not really because I didn't want an SUV.
Yeah.
We didn't even consider trucks because I love trucks, but at the same time, I didn't need one.
Yeah.
I just had no need to have a truck.
Dude, everybody needs a truck.
Yeah. In hindsight, it would have been nice to maybe have an F-150, right? Or even a Ranger.
Even a Ranger, yeah.
But that's what I had settled on because as we went through a lot of the cars, there were two cars that actually ended up
narrowing the list down,
which was funny because one of them Grant's going to mock me for. So, and rightly so, now that I'm dealing with this problem right now. One of them was a Dodge Journey, which the Dodge Journey, I had told Grant, I said, "Oh, hey, Grant, I found this car. It looks really cool. And guess what? It's only got one problem."
I said, "What's that? What's the problem, Antonio?"
I said, "It just has electrical gremlins. It's got electrical problems."
Oh, is that all? Yeah. That's fine. We don't need electrical.
Nah.
Yeah.
Which I'll segue to us related to that in a second. Right now. One of my friends down in South Carolina, they no longer have this car, but they had a Journey. And, she drove me to the airport, and those electrical gremlins, yeah, they're real. And
Oh, yeah.
not only are they real, they're really just bizarre.
They're hell.
Yeah.
So we're driving down to the airport. The cabin light will randomly turn on at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
Then the trunk cover will disengage and engage. Sometimes her clicker for her turn signal would randomly click on and off. And it's just these weird things that you can't explain why it's doing it. It's almost like the car is haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking in hindsight at the time, I'm like, oh my God, thank God I didn't get this car.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
You know, the other car was I believe it was between a Chevy Malibu or a Chevy Cruze. Might have been a Cruze, more leading on the Cruze.
I think, yeah.
Which, unfortunately, with that one, and one of my friends, you know, his dad had a Cruze. Loved that car. It's a great car. It got point A to point B. You know, just no nonsense. Unfortunately, that particular Cruze model we were looking at, I guess, was notorious for having engine problems.
Not just engine problems, it was cylinder problems, blowing cylinders and breaking them.
Yeah, because the actual engines were built
Quality
very
stuff.
weak.
Yeah.
Yes.
Real quality.
Which begs the question, because you sometimes, when I was looking at these cars at the time, I even talked to Grant about it, and I said, you know, it's really weird. There's a lot of Cruzes that are available, very low mile Cruzes.
Yeah.
And some of them even had they were certified pre-owned, so they had an extended warranty on top of that. Mm-hmm. So even me and Grant were like, this is just before we had even covered those problems, we're like, what's the catch? Like, why are they selling so low, even putting warranties on these cars, right? It almost sounds too good to be true. And you start realizing, oh, that's why.
It is.
Yeah.
Because of the engines.
Yeah. So we settled on, for you at the time, was the Ford Focus, because
Yes.
everything was about it was right. The transmission became, our thoughts on the transmission was, even if that failed, it's a whole other component we can replace or fix on the own. If it's like an engine going out, that's a huge component on that one.
It is.
That transmission, I would say, is what inspired me to actually start figuring out how to work on these things, right?
Yeah.
Because there was going to come a point me and Grant talked about. That transmission's going to go. And when it does go, he's not going to drop everything to do it for me.
Right.
I mean, he will help me, but he's not going to stop his projects, stop his life to be like, let's go work 3 weekends on a transmission.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? That's something that I now need to own.
Right.
And at a bare minimum, if at the time, let's say when we were talking about it, if I wasn't going to own the portion of fixing it, have the money and means to then have it repaired,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I did, still do to a point.
There's a lot of teaching that I like kind of installed into him, which granted, some of our friends, I've done the same thing, but like, would you agree, Antonio, like with saving the money on the side for that, or not fixing it yourself? That like, how many of our friends actually go by that, and how much have they suffered for that?
I would say
It's half.
Yeah.
It's half.
Is it half?
I would say half.
That's a pretty high number.
I would say half, because some of them will just bite the bullet and just go get their stuff repaired.
Yeah.
Some of them do have, of course, money, and I've known some of my friends. Yeah, if they got stuff that breaks down, it sucks. They may,
But
for a
they just
couple
go get it
days,
fixed and
figure it
whatever.
out. And yeah, and they'll go to a dealership or whatever, or a shop, and be like, "Here, go get it done."
Yeah.
Yep.
And I give them credit at that point, right? Because that is what you're supposed to do, right? You're either going to work on it yourself, or
Yeah.
you're going to
Get it
have someone
fixed.
else do it for you, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
else, why own a car?
Well, I mean, or you're just going to throw it away and get another one. I know
Yeah.
a handful of people that subscribe to that philosophy as well.
Well, and previous to me owning a car, I basically rode TriMet everywhere, and I didn't think I needed a car
Right.
because I could get everywhere on TriMet.
Oh, you can if you live in a city situation.
Yeah, which I live in Beaverton, so
Right.
but I would even use TriMet as a point of proof that I could get even to places like Wilsonville on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, be like, hey, I'm here where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, I'm able to do all these things. Now, of course, because when I got my car, you realize, yeah, you know, it's taking an hour to get to, let's say, the Moda Center, right? From wherever I'm at. Let's say Deep Hillsboro, then to get to the Moda Center. But now with the car, it's like 15, 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
All that
there's
time you save.
certain amount of freedom. So that we kind of rabbit holed there.
Yeah.
What spurred you? Because now you have a second car, strictly for enjoyment.
Yeah.
What car is that?
It's a 99 Mustang. It's a V6 Mustang.
Yep.
With
No traction control, no ABS.
I was saying the row stick.
Oh, yeah,
shift-
it's a manual.
manual.
It's a manual.
Yeah.
So I go from a dual clutch automatic. It's a what is it? It's a manual that wants to be an automatic to an actual manual.
Yeah. Yeah. And that purchase was
That was the best purchase I ever did. Not gonna lie.
yeah, but okay, good, but it was. What was the reason for that purchase?
Well, I wanted to get a Mustang. At some point, let me rephrase that. Before we get to that, right? I've always
I mean,
wanted.
not everybody makes great choices, but okay.
But one. I forgot I'm talking to a Chevy guy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. Okay. Which you might mock me further. The dream car I've always wanted to own is a Viper. I've always wanted to own a Dodge Viper, but I'm very specific on what kind of Viper I want. I either want a very specific Gen 1, and I know exactly how it needs to be spec'd out, or a very specific Gen 3, right? The Gen 2s, those are a little bit, unfortunately, out of my price range. And I understand that's the poster car. It was on a lot of video games, so I get it. There's a lot of nostalgia behind those cars. But Grant would say, well, you want a Viper, how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
I just thought I was going to hop in and go. No, not with those cars. So they'll kill you. You know, if you don't know what you're doing, it's a car that it can put yourself in danger and others, right? So the suggestion was, or not a suggestion, more like a demand, if you will, right? Because let's say I did buy a Viper. At the time when I was looking at Vipers, financially speaking, I could finance one. Now, not as much. But Grant had pointed out that if I did finance a Viper, he pretty much wouldn't help me drive or learn to drive on that car. And I don't blame him.
Yeah. I also said it wouldn't help you wrench on that. If it broke, I'm like, you're on your own. I'm not helping you with any responsibilities because, in my opinion, going from a jump from a daily driver to a car with no ABS, no traction, it's only got 400 horses. And a car that light with no safety features, I don't care who you are.
I was going to say, there's two other safety features it doesn't have, right? Because those original ones didn't have airbags in the steering wheel.
Yeah.
No airbags in the car, I think. And then there's no roll bar.
You're just asking for trouble.
Yes.
On all sorts of levels. If you're not prepared for it, haven't even prepped,
right,
any kind.
So that's where the idea of, starting small.
Work up to it.
Yeah. We happened to find a 99 Ford Mustang that was a V6. It would have been about the same amount of power comparably to my Ford Focus, but the big thing was it had no traction control, it had no ABS. So I would be able to learn that experience of what a Viper is on a smaller scale.
I need to interrupt you.
Oh, much, much smaller scale.
Because the fact is, when we were actually looking for cars for him to start driving and what would be a good option, he was hell-bent on no SN95s.
Oh, yeah.
There was a whole period where it was like, why would I do this and blah, blah, blah.
I don't blame you.
I'm not going to lie. And people are going to be like, why do you own it? I hate SN95 bodies. I do not like that car.
Yeah.
The way it looks... The way I've never liked them. Growing up as a kid, I would see that car. I was like, that thing's a piece of crap. Funny, though, I like the Chevy Camaro from those years. That's that long skateboard.
Yeah.
And people are like, why would you like that?
Should have got a Gen 3.
I should have. But at the time, the reason also why I wanted to get a Ford, or in general, right? I was already working on a Ford. Grant works mostly on Fords. I'm not saying he can't work on anything else. He absolutely can. But what is your specialty?
It's Fords.
He needs to branch out.
He does need to branch out, and I need to branch out too, right? Yeah. All this is helpful.
And I've been branching out slowly.
Yes.
But the fact is, if something happened, we could address it quickly.
Oh, yeah.
We had even talked about how that V6 engine, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, was also in your original Red Explorer that you had. Yeah. So I would know what the possible problems were, especially at the mileage it was, what to expect, right? There weren't going to be really any surprises.
Yeah.
But the big thing was, it's just also a really good price. I mean, we got that car for $1,200.
Oh, nice.
$1,200. The guy, we had met up in Scappoose, really, really cool guy. And it was funny because at the time, me and Grant, we were watching the anime called Combatants Will Be Dispatched. And we had asked the guy, we're like, hey.
This is important, Rob.
Yeah.
Trust me. I know, you're making a face. We had asked the guy, like, hey, did this car ever have a name? Because we asked if it had a story behind it. So the Mustang was purchased by his parents. They got it brand new from the factory, and then they gave it to him. He drove it around, but as soon as I guess he had a child, that car just sat because it needed more room.
Yeah.
So then he sold it to me, and we asked him, like, did this car ever have a nickname or a name of any sort? The car's name apparently was Rose. There's a character in Combatants Will Be Dispatched that's name is Rose, and that was our favorite character at the time. And I'm like, this is so perfect. Not to mention, on another anime segue, the back of the license...
Oh my God, we're going down an anime road.
I'm sorry. The back of the license plate says 086, which we had just finished maybe a year ago. Initial D, which the main car character is a Toyota 86.
I'm just going to apologize to everybody right now. Didn't know this was happening.
Sorry.
The two things about that Mustang buying it, I want to touch on.
Well, before you touch it,
Good God, you guys step on each other a lot.
Sorry. There was one thing that I guess they told us that the car didn't do. The car didn't stop.
That's what I was going to touch on.
Oh, no brakes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently throughout that car it was a mechanic special because they had found water in the brakes and another mechanic had diagnosed it. So all the fluid and lines, they found it. He's like, you're going to need all new seals, all new type brake lines and whatnot. And when we bought it, I told Antonio, I'm like, This is perfect because it is a good starter project where we know it runs and drives. The thing is a brake system, which you're going to learn how to do rotors, swap out calipers. We're going to learn about torque spec. We're going to get all into this. And then after that, because we know we're going to drive any small gremlins, maintenance, we can address slowly on that.
Yeah.
Which it did actually have a few small gremlins, and which was nice because it just wasn't just going to be a simple fix, right? And when we ended up finding out it was literally just this proportion valve that's probably no bigger than, the actual valve itself is no bigger than my hand, and it's got, of course, the rods that connect to it that then disperse all the fluid out to the brakes.
Right.
That ended up being the actual problem why the car wouldn't stop, because that's where all of that water and just
moisture
crap,
collected
there.
Yeah.
The part itself, we ended up getting one at a pick and pull for, what, $10?
Something like that, $5.
Yeah.
Yeah, $5-10, right? Car now stops.
Yeah.
That was
But
it.
we also did go through the entire brake system just in case.
Yep. No, we did. And that's what we were going to do anyways, because if I'm going to autocross this car, I want to have fresh brakes. But ultimately, we just needed to figure out how that car was going to stop, and it was the proportion valve.
And that's really why you bought the cars, to autocross, not just to learn how to work on it, which good car for that because it's basic.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have 10 zillion electronic gadgets running through it. Does it even have a radio? Please say no. Please say no.
No,
Please
it
say
does.
no.
It
Damn
does.
it.
It's got a CD and cassette player. You know how great that is?
Wow, it's got both?
Yeah.
You know how excited I was when I saw that it had the
That's
dual
actually
thing?
really rare.
No, let me tell you what also I was excited for, and hopefully I won't get mocked about this.
You will.
It had a crotch vent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has a crotch vent. I don't
That's
care what anybody
cool.
says. The best invention ever.
I know, I can't
is
believe
the
they got rid of
crotch
those.
vent. Whoever got rid of that needs to be fired and have their license revoked.
Oh,
No.
low blow. Actually, no low blow. Sorry,
Funny guys. I don't know who it was, but whoever did it, it wasn't a good idea.
No.
Right? And what's crazy is that thing's a 99. I don't think it's ever been serviced for AC. Maybe I'm wrong. That thing blows colder air than my Ford Focus.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's cool.
So the two things I was wanting to touch on was when we were buying that car, because we knew it was going to be a project on that one, that was kind of the thought process was, it's not a non-running, body work needs to be done, it's going to be down for 6 months, a year, whatever. It was something like, okay, it's running, and if there is anything, it's small, we can address for that. It was a good learning project on top of wrenching, on top of driving.
Right.
The second thing I want to say, though, because he was saying earlier that he hates the SN95 body look. The one reason, it was me and our mutual friend Arthur, how we convinced Antonio to go that route was, as much as he hated that design, as for the price it was, if he didn't like it, at least keep it for a few months to learn how to drive manual, because before he didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
And then once he did, I'm like, you can sell it, get the Camaro you wanted, get the actual Mustang you wanted. But this is just something that's,
I agree.
not
It's
lot
a
of
great
horsepower.
stepping stone car,
Yeah.
like for working on, figuring out how to wrench on stuff, driving it, beating on it.
Yeah.
And
now I don't want to get rid of it.
I
I don't want to get rid of it now.
That's weird, but okay. I think, there's a lot of directions you could go from here. You've gotten to where it drives, it's got a lot of body roll. It needs a lot of work to be a quote unquote competitive.
I got a lot of body roll.
So do I.
OEM.
Yeah. I guess my point was, though, you could move on from it pretty easily, You've made it do what you wanted it to do. So is it time to move on to that Camaro that, get a Gen 3 and work on a Chevy for a while? And, you've pigeonholed me as a Chevy guy. My race cars are Chevys. My other two
Your flag
vehicles,
is a Chevy behind you.
I have two Fords in the driveway.
Yes.
But, work on something else for a while. Get something with maybe two extra cylinders, maybe.
I'm really the first one to branch out and be a Ford guy, because I come from a Mopar family. Most of my family, most of my extended family, even just my parents mainly, it's Mopar.
Wow.
Like the
Die
Chevy
Hard.
Cobalt that we have now, that's the first really Chevy ever, right? Because my dad owned a Cadillac for like 2 months.
Yeah.
That doesn't really count.
No.
He basically owned it. I remember it had an 8-track player. It was a Cadillac Eldorado. I think it was like a 79 or something like that. And he had it for 2 months, and my mom hated it. And he sold it and made money off it. That's all I remember about that car.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. I forgot. There was another Chevy. There was a 75 Monte Carlo that he had, which I wish he still to this day had, because that would have been a great car for me to have restored. But he ended up selling it.
So now that you're stuck with the Ford,
Stuck is such a permanent word.
it is. It is. It's like, well, you've decided that you actually like the car. What are you going to do with it?
Which one?
The yeah,
Right?
not the Mustang.
I don't know yet. I honestly still don't know what I want to do with it. I still think there's a lot for me to still master on that car, if you will, before I get something else. And maybe,
Yeah, but do you need to master it on that car?
maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think it's just maybe because I've become attached to that car. Like I said, kind of weird considering the fact that I hate the car.
Right.
Right? Because I hate the body, but I like this particular car because it's my car.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a difference. All of a sudden, it's got an attachment.
Not to mention the fact it's got a tiny wing on it now too.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it
Little blue
was
one.
if it was Laura or Adam who put it on there, but now I feel like that car has just become a part of me now. You know,
So you don't know where you're going to go with it next? Like,
There's been discussion on that one.
well, we discuss about it, and then like 2 minutes later, I change my mind, saying I don't want to get rid of it. That's
yeah.
the problem.
Well, so we've talked about upgrading to a different platform with a V8, and then we've talked about if he's keeping it, what it can be done with that.
well, that's where I was going. Was not what do you want to do with the car? As in, do you want to sell it or whatever?
Yeah.
More, what are your plans to work on the car, and are you going to take on projects that you've never done before as a learning experience? Trying to better your mechanic skills and that kind of stuff.
So the next step that Grant had talked about is maybe putting in an IRS system, the independent.
Well, that's a big step.
That was the next thing that we thought about doing.
Why would you go there? There are so many things that you could do with that car to improve its drivability that would not include that giant money step.
That was the
Like-
big thing. It was the money.
Yeah.
Money, and of course, people who have those are smart, right? If you have a Cobra and you have that, a lot of people would part that out specifically out, be like, here's the Cobra, you can get whatever you want off it, but this particular part, the IRS, we're gonna sell it to you for $2, $3, $4 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's how you make money on that, but then you're not losing money overall.
Yeah. Especially when the idea came for that one specifically, they were pretty cheap. Like I'd say 2 years ago, we were looking at that when they were about under $1,000 for an IRS, like $800 you can get them for.
I mean, yeah, I could see that upgrade, but
It's
just, yeah, I would lower it. I would not go IRS.
yeah.
I would just lower it, put it on coilovers, get rid of the body roll, possibly put some sway bars on it to stiffen it up, and drive it like that.
So
Because if you can get rid of the body roll, because it's bad,
yeah,
That's what
like
I know everybody's
really bad,
I don't know who it
you
was.
could drive that car so much more aggressively.
Someone had asked me, like, how do you not like get car sick from when we're racing
Yeah.
because of all the body roll? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just
Well,
used to it.
Being the driver, it's a lot easier. A passenger, I could see getting motion sickness in that thing.
Oh yeah.
we have a whole list for that car, what to do and how to make that actually competitive and good while keeping it on budget. Because the thing is this, it's a V6.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, if you decide to sell it, it's not going to retain the value.
No,
So
at this point, it's race car.
So
Just
the way
do whatever
to
you want.
the way to keep that down and set instead of saying why don't you just sell it and buy a V8,
Right.
Because a lot of ways it makes it worth it going that way is seeing how many factory parts you can get from a GT or
Screw
from
his thoughts on factory parts. That pisses
No,
me off.
hang on.
The whole factory, it's got to be factory.
Hang on.
Stop.
But
Don't listen
I was
to
gonna
that.
say you're not gonna like.
But we're for economy. You can get a sway bar for $50. Just small independent upgrades instead of going huge onto that.
You buy a $50 sway bar, you get $50 worth of bullshit.
But when you're going
buy
from,
something that's worthwhile. Don't listen to that shit.
But when you're going from like a 24 millimeter sway bar front end to a 34 in the front from a GT, that's a huge jump, and for not that much money.
Yeah.
You know, lowering springs, we've talked about that one. The V8 swap, we've also talked about going that way.
I think that's a good
that's
option.
that's one we've definitely discussed on that one.
But here's, I think right now you're at a tipping point
Yeah.
with that car. You either double down and say this is going to be the car because any money you put into it now is lost. Okay?
Yes.
Or you sell it and get a platform that you want. So you can't go a little bit in. You either dive all the way in or you get rid of it and move on.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where we've been discussing for a while. What's the next step with that car? Because right now, in terms of factory, other than the seats, it's really, really good. I would say somewhat low mileage car. What, 120, 30,000 miles?
I think it's 124. I've only put on, I think, 2,000 miles just from autocrossing. I mean, that's just me driving to Shelton and back and racing it.
Right.
Yeah.
It gets gotten driven maybe a couple times in the summer if Grant wants to go out, or if I want to just enjoy it, right?
Right.
In summer, it's nice. But like right now, it's sitting in Tigard, and what do you call it? It's on comprehensive insurance.
Yeah.
I'm not driving it.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah,
going
it's
to pay insurance for
Winter
it.
time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whatever Antonio chooses for the next big step, either sell that car and get it, or finally put some, whether it's suspension, put an engine into it, whatever.
I think,
it's going to be a change the course permanently for that car.
Well, yeah. And like I said, you've got to make that decision. It's now or what do you do?
Right.
You know? For the well-being of your driving, you need to do something.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you should drive it in the shape that it's in. Not that you can't. I'm not saying that. It's not like it's not safe or something. But driving it another year the way it sits doesn't do you any good.
Right.
You need to make steps forward. So, if you want to progress in your driving ability and that kind of stuff, you need to have a better car to do that because the car is now holding you back.
Yeah. Can I say the most crazy thing we were going to do to that, or it's been planned on that car?
Oh, God.
Are you actually going to do it?
So
probably
Antonio's
not,
been debating if he wants to go V8, and if he doesn't, he's like, I like the fact of V6. It's more ridiculous that it could be faster than people with a V6 and learn that more. And he's like, I kind of want to keep it this way. And I'm like, well, if you want to keep it that way and get power out of it, and you want to keep it cheap, the thought we did research into that and found out you can swap a supercharge from the '90s T-Bird onto that and give an extra 100 horses.
Yeah.
I
mean, that wouldn't, for the expense of that, it's not a bad.
$500 for a full swap.
Right, yeah.
including ECM
That's not that bad.
Yeah.
It would be a fun little swap, something to do.
Wouldn't it be just fun to just know how to install one of those things on, right?
Sure,
Another piece of experience I can get out of it.
Learn how to drive it with that and that kind of stuff. I think that's, for an intermediate move, pretty good. I agree with the V8 swap, though. A little 5-liter in that would really make it scoot because that car is light.
It is.
So, but in order to handle the extra power of either the supercharger or a bigger motor, you've got to do a suspension swap. That's your next move.
Yeah.
You got to get that thing to stop body rolling. You're going to just roll it over in a corner at some point.
Yeah. If you put a 5-liter into it, though, the problem is, that doubles the cost of the motor is like triple what the car is worth.
Yeah, that's why I said you got to double down now.
Yeah.
If you keep moving forward, just throwing parts at it, you're wasting your money.
So what's your thoughts on this? I've talked about with some of our fellow friends on the track on this as well as I've talked to Antonio about this. And we talked earlier about getting ready for the Viper, jumping up to that. And in my opinion, it's you go increments. You start at 140 and then going to 190 in the Mustang. The next step would be 300 in the 4.6, then 400, going up every so often in horsepower.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the idea, but there's a lot of steps there that you're going to be spending money on that you won't get a return on.
Yeah.
Putting the supercharger on that car, you'll be close to 300 horsepower with it?
250 something more. Yeah, around 300. Because
So
if he goes with the GT of that area, same thing. It's about 300 horses, 275.
So that's a decent step and learning curve. But again, the suspension is going to hold you back. You won't be able to drive the car to its potential.
Right.
So that's where the issue is.
Well, and the incremental steps, even if they cost me money, that's cost doing business. I mean, I get that if you can save money. Yeah, and I get that if you can save money. I mean, we're all for that, right? Everybody, no matter what industry, you want to save money.
Right.
But the just incrementals, I do like them because they've put me in check a few times. So for a day, I owned a 2014 Ford Mustang. It was the V6 of that era. So it wasn't the Cologne. It was the Cyclone V6. Mm-hmm. And I remember on this particular, it was just my normal left turn that I make every day when I leave home. It was a 20-mile-an-hour turn, and I remember the back end almost kicked out on me pretty hard. And we're on just a public road, and it scared the shit out of me. And that was enough. Of course, of the other problems that the car had, I ended up returning it and getting my money back out of it. But I understand now why he wanted to go increment. Because if I would have jumped right into, let's say, a 5.0 Mustang as my first race car, I would have crashed that thing.
This was before your current Mustang, right?
No, I had already owned, so I had owned the V6 at this point.
But it wasn't very long.
So I owned the 99. I haven't owned it for that long. Me getting that 2014 Mustang was me swapping out of my Ford Focus, right?
Yeah.
So I had made, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that V6 Mustang made more power than your V8
Correct.
at the time.
It makes 320 horses from factory.
So I doubled the horsepower from my Ford Focus to that.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not going to make excuses. People can say, well, the tires were taller, they're skinnier. No, it has nothing to do with that. At this point, it was just a fact. I'm not experienced enough to drive that car, so when I fucking throttled it and turned, and it was wet, the car kicked out because I didn't have control of the car.
What you experienced at that day is what most people film on Instagram for, oh, look, Mustang drivers don't drive or do that.
I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad you did.
But unlike those people, that was it. That was a check for me.
Yeah.
Because it was 20 miles an hour, so I shouldn't have been scared, right? I don't care what anybody says. It was enough that it scared me. You had that.
Well, because you're inexperienced driver.
Right. And I had that pain in the bottom of my stomach where I was like, I need to get rid of this thing because it's going to fucking kill me. Because I'm going to do something stupid thinking that I'm going to be fine.
Just learn to drive.
Sure. But I'm just saying that it was enough at that point that
I got
the
you.
increments were important.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, and I guess increments for the platform that you have, just know that you may not get as much return out of them, and that's fine. Like you said, that's cost of doing business. As soon as you start building a car, you have to realize that.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. So the other topic was, let's say we did get rid of it, right? And I didn't want to go to his generation, but I stayed in the S95. Would then going to just a traditional GT, which would have had the V8, or trying to find a Cobra, would have been enough? Or do I need to just jump another platform completely?
That's personal preference.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about
I would say get out of that platform.
Yeah, we've talked about you jumping into like a not fish body, wide body, catfish Camaro. There we go. 4th gen.
Okay.
Yeah, they have the big mouth.
Okay.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Never heard it called a catfish.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like that's the first thing on Wikipedia it says.
Well, that's whatever.
We're Ford guys. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be personal preference. Personally, I would not go with Mustang. They take way more input, dollars, and work to make them competitive than any other Chevy platform. And that's just the way it is. Parts ready, availability is greater in a Chevy platform.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
No, seriously, I didn't know that.
Yeah, for sure. But again, if you're not a Chevy guy, that's do what you want. Mustangs are heavy.
I mean, I do like Chevys, right? Because it's I like the big three. I like Chevrolets. The problem is, I think to a degree, is there is a little bit of like, I don't know what it is. I like Mustangs. Mustangs are just, it's a really cool car,
that's
right?
Fine. Just know that that's a 4,000-pound tank.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a good starting platform. But like you're right, Camaros you can build into a lot better scalpel.
Yeah. And I think maybe the other reason why was when I growing up, right, and I would see people who own Chevrolets. So Chevrolets, as far as I know, and even to this day, right, they're always a little bit more expensive than you're buying a Ford, to a degree, on some, even comparing trucks, right?
Yeah, maybe.
It always feels like when you're buying a Chevy, you're getting a lot more out of it, right? They're putting more into it. I mean, the Suburbans, for example, in my opinion, they're a lot nicer than getting a Ford Expedition, even at the top of the line.
Agreed.
But I never saw myself getting a Chevy growing up because it was just, I never thought I could have enough money to get one. Mm-hmm. So when I would see people, for example, who drove Corvettes, I'm like, I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to have that kind of money to own a Corvette. And that's why, still to a degree, I can't see myself in a Corvette. They're really cool cars to look at. But I just never could imagine myself owning one of those versus when I would see people who owned Mustangs. A lot of the times they were just people like, I was like, oh, hey, he just works at the local, store, or maybe he does this. And I could see myself in the seat of one of those, but never like a Corvette or even a Camaro.
Yeah, I think you could get into a Corvette, honestly.
Yeah.
Like even a C4, like financially, you could get into one of those. Mm-hmm. Same price as a Mustang.
Yeah. Right. As I got older, you realize, there are cheap Corvettes. They do exist.
Yes, they do.
I think, at least for me, I'm so caught up in looking at these beautiful, because they are beautiful cars.
I honestly
newer Corvettes,
think a C4 Corvette would be a good next step because they're not super high powered. Like that era of Corvette, what were they, 250 horsepower max? Like they were not, maybe 300, but
3 to 350 on the early 90s. Yeah. I think either that or getting like an early base model C5.
They were super mild mannered.
Yeah.
An early C5 would be good.
Because they're at 300-ish horsepower, you still have all the traction control. Parts are available everywhere for them.
Everywhere, and it's very buildable.
Yeah.
So I personally would lean that direction. I would not buy a Mustang. They're heavy.
Yeah.
The parts are harder. Ask Grant. Yeah. Honestly, the parts are harder to get.
Oh, yeah.
On the Mustang?
Yeah.
Well, I will say this,
I think your outlets for parts are limited more so than its counterpart.
Yeah.
I feel like at times, Grant, you also struggle to find parts at times for certain things on your Mustang where either you had to build it yourself or you had to go take it from another Ford to make it work.
Put it on there. Yeah. I will say this. I think if you're talking about your first car, getting into it, it's between either a cheap Camaro or
It's not his
cheap
first
Mustang. I know. But I'm saying like you're first trying to get performance out of that or mechanically out of that.
Yeah.
Once you've got a hold of the platform, and it's one thing that we've talked and I've taught you about that, is once you've learned how to master a platform of that caliber, going to the next one is a whole different level. I think it's ready to jump into a V8 car, either Mustang Camaro, a Corvette, going into something like that, going into, I don't know, even if you want to go Miata, something completely different.
Ooh, Miata, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
because once you learn these big, heavy cars, a little bit smushy suspension and how they act and stuff, you can transfer that easy to anything else.
Agreed.
And build up from there.
Yeah.
You should have seen me in the picture that I took with Byron and his Miata. I was taller than the roll bar.
Yeah.
Like, that car, I will die. And plus, it's too small. I just can't do it.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I don't know. All my opinions where you should go with that, but I think you need to make a move.
I think this season, I'm still going to have that car. Next season, my hope is to get into something else.
Yeah.
That is my hope.
Yeah.
I got to actually sit
So
down.
are
and
you
think
actually,
about-
for this season, are you going to make any changes to the car?
I mean, the only major change that we were doing is we're putting in a sway bar that we ended up getting through a mutual friend of ours, which for what kind of Mustang was it, Grant?
It's for a Cobra Fox body. So bigger front end sway bar from the front.
Okay.
So that'll help that.
Yeah.
We talked about putting which I may have to consider your idea, right? Getting just coilovers.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm getting rid of the car, potentially,
Well-
why even go that route?
Well, so like you said, there is an expense to this. And if you could do that supercharger in the interim to give yourself a little boost of power, that would be cool. Because don't you have one?
I do have one, but it won't fit. We need the intake and everything else. So it's going to a junkyard, pulling off, going that route.
Yeah. I mean, fairly inexpensively, you could make that happen. I would get a used set of coilovers. I would not buy brand new. Because why?
Because that's the hard part, is because this is a V6 and it's lighter.
Yeah.
It's very harder to find a set of coilers that are for the V6. The V8's ones that we've looked into make it either too stiff because they're either made for the convertible or for the
Cobra.
or the Cobra or the GT.
I'd do it anyway.
Think so?
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be more.
Yeah,
Bouncy.
rigid. Fucking slam that thing to the ground. Absolutely. I would do it anyway.
Well, that's the thing. It won't slam it to the ground because the
adjustable.
lower. Well, that's if you go adjustable. If you're going with the base model coilover or lowering springs, for example, it's all about the weight. So if you put a set of GT coilovers on there, it's not going to lower as much because it's not accounting for the weight.
Aren't they? Well, I guess it depends on what model you go to, but
Yeah. So that's what we're saying. If we bought and we looked at for lowering springs for his Mustang, the V6, because it weighs what, another 800 pounds less,
Yeah, something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah. That's a big amount of difference. Where if he puts them on like a G, it's not going to lower a damn thing. So that's one issue he's got to decide on that one.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue with this season that it's going to affect him is tires. I think with the current tires you got, maybe get a couple events, maybe halfway through the season. But if he has to buy another set of tires specific for that, then whenever you're in next year, you're out those tires, and that's not a cheap investment.
Unless they happen to fit exactly the same way that like my Focus tires did.
Yeah, but
That's the only reason why they worked is because those Focus tires, when I autocrossed the car,
What size wheels are you running now?
16s,
they're 235 by like
235s?
70 by like 16s.
something like that.
You could sell those to a Miata guy. The tires.
Yeah.
Probably.
Unused portion, absolutely.
Yeah,
Byron will buy them from you.
there you go.
So, all right, let's switch gears a little bit. How's it been learning to work on the car? Like, especially, and Grant, you're not allowed to talk. I'm going to turn your mic off.
Okay, muting right about.
Okay. So, as Grant as the instructor,
Oh, jeez.
and even in my show notes, I said he took you under his giant chicken wing, and is learning you how to work on stuff. How's that been?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, Grant has a very specific way of teaching you how to do things.
Yep.
That's not a bad thing. That's just the way his brain works.
Yep.
But you need to be able to adapt to that. And sometimes, the one thing I will give credit to Grant 100%, and it's forcing me to become this too. Grant is extremely creative.
Sometimes in a bad way.
Sometimes in a bad way, but when it comes to car stuff, I got to give him props for that. Because there's a lot of the times where I'm thinking, I need to get this specific tool. I need to get this specific thing. And Grant's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, we can figure this out.
Build it right here.
Yeah.
Or do this another way. Right?
He's a mechanic. Mechanics are like that.
Yes.
Yep.
And one of the things that he has also tried to teach me is you're not going to have access to everything, right? So when he took me under his wing and we first started, I was basically banned from using power tools.
Yeah.
Everything had to be, your standard wrenches and ratchet, nothing electrical.
So you can feel it.
Exactly.
Yep.
And his big emphasis, I would say, for anything like that is torque specs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things have to be torqued. I won't get into an argument with people if they don't believe that torque specs are real. Okay, fine, whatever. That's your thing.
Yep.
For my vehicle, everything is torqued to spec. I'm not gonna have a discussion with people on my stuff. Now it's on their stuff. That's their own business.
Yeah, do your thing.
Yeah,
tight is tight.
But for me, no. Everything gets torqued to spec. And he also encouraged me to buy a service manual for both of my vehicles, right? I should be able to open my book and look at and help myself. So that way I'm not necessarily bothering him, because he could be doing his own thing. Because the dream would be that I could work on my thing on my side. He can work on his thing on his side. And if we need help because, hey, I need you to help me lift this. I need you to do this. Then that's what we're there for. Not, hey, Grant, how do you tighten this? Or how do you get rid of this? Or no, I can't do this.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And so it's been a mix. Sometimes I've gotten frustrated, not going to lie, because sometimes I think he will lose. I won't say he loses patience, but
he loses patience.
Okay, he loses patience. If we've been there for too long and I'm still struggling with one thing, yeah, he'll just want to take it over.
Yep.
Fine. I understand that, right? We've been here for 4 hours on something that should be not that long.
Right.
Now, though, I would say that's not the case anymore. Now I can kind of be left alone to do my own thing, and I can get it done. I will say, for example, I recently just did the brakes on my Ford Focus. It did take me a long time because it felt like I had to relearn it. But for the most part, I would say I didn't have to ask Grant, be like, hey, how do you use this? No, I turned on my own brain and figured out he's not going to always be there.
Right.
He's doing his thing. Yeah. I got to be able to do this on my own. Sure enough, I was able to do it.
What's been the biggest challenge for learning how to, do your brakes or do any mechanical duty you have to do on the car? What's been like your biggest stumbling block?
My stumbling block, I would say, is that I get so caught up in when you see how it's done, right? Because one of the things I like to do is I will go online and see, I'm doing, for example, the rack and pinion on my Mustang. Okay. I see a video. Oh, it's going to be easy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the brilliance of Hollywood, or in this case, just video editing,
right,
is they're making it look easy because that's their job. That's what they're supposed to do.
Well, that, and they've got years and years and years of practice.
Exactly. I don't have that.
Right.
So when I've need to have been able to, let me rephrase this. I need to take that and say, this is just a resource. This is an idea of what it could be, not this is the exact science. Because when we were doing the rack and pinion, for example, they made it look so easy when they were removing the coils. Turns out that was when we were doing that portion of the job that it was the hardest part to do.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't find the right kind of way to compress the spring.
Yep.
And I bought 4 different kinds, maybe, of compressors. Mm-hmm. None of them worked, except for the one that was staring at us right in the face, which was this bear trap style one. It was a lot bigger, but it clamped it from 4 points and clamped it down. Yeah. And that was the way we were able to get it off. But that wasn't in the video.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the big thing for me is I need to just say, this is a resource. This is what it is. It could be like this, but I need to be able to adapt that. That's not how it is.
Right.
It could be a lot harder.
Yeah.
I mean, even just maybe removing the cotter pins or getting the tie rods removed from the knuckle.
Oh, that can be a bitch.
Well, on this one in particular, because it's such an older car and it probably had never been done.
Yep.
It was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the guy on the video. He probably hammered that thing like maybe 6 times.
Popped
Came right off. Me over here, I'm hammering. It ain't coming off. Go grab a bigger hammer. That's not doing anything.
Yep.
Grab another hammer. That's not doing anything. Grab a pry bar. No, that's not doing anything. I then called Grant over. I don't remember how he got it off, but he got it off. Mm. But it was the thing that right there was already when I was starting getting frustrated.
Well, it makes you question it too. Is like, is this really how this is supposed to work?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be really just hitting this thing?
I gotta interrupt on that one and say the best part was before he started that tie rod thing, he comes to me, I'm like, are you sure you don't? He's like, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Famous last words. He's like, I'll have us off in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting over there working on my Mustang, and I'm out of sight, but I'm giggling the entire time, hearing curse word after curse word.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
That's what I would say is hard, right? I need to take a look at a job and say it's not going to be easy, right? Don't give myself expectations. Just go in there and do the job.
Let's see how long this will take.
Right. So now, because of that experience, when I hear friends tell me, especially if they're not car people, right? And they're like, hey, can you help me with this? It's going to be so easy. I'm like,
nah.
No. It's really not.
How long do you think it's going to take? Okay, multiply that by 4, and then maybe you're there.
I think it took us how many weekends? I think like 4 weekends to get a rack and pinion job done.
Yeah. An hour and a half job.
And that includes, by the way, the realignment. I'm including that in there too, because that's a part of it.
Yep.
So that's what I would say is the hardest is I need to just check myself.
Yeah.
And now that I would say now at this point, I'm probably a lot better at it after that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting better. I mean, and the more mechanically inclined you get to be able to look at things and kind of figure out, even if you're watching the video and say, okay, well, this is the process. Mm-hmm. Now we have to figure out how that applies to what I'm working on. Mm-hmm. Because even if you find somebody working on the exact same vehicle, things are different. Things are always different for whatever reason.
Speaking of difference, and Antonio has like the best stories on this one, power steering pumps.
Yeah, I was about to get to that actually, because that's another one where you watch the videos and they make it look so easy. And me and Grant have probably gone through 8 or 9 power steering pumps on multiple vehicles and just have incidents with them every time, including my Mustang. And in fact, the brilliant idea that we did at one point to avoid this is we just took an entire power steering pump assembly out of a Mustang, out of a junkyard, and we're just like, you know what? We're done with this one. Take it out, put this one in.
Yeah.
And it worked for a season. Mm-hmm. But then there came a point where we had to just service it finally again. And just it's one of those things where like getting the actual pulley on the power steering assembly, that's the hardest part.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking like at times there would be, when we would start it, it would be 2.5 hours process.
Is it a press fit, like a positive fit, so you have to heat one side and press it on?
You have to, with them, it's a special tool for Ford, and you have to pull and push down at the same time. If you press it in, it busts out the back of the cast iron.
Right, so you have to pull on the shiv or the mounting bolt, whatever you want to call it.
Correct, and because it's such a tight fitting, you can bust off your tool specifically going through that. You can bust everything going through that. And we've had it where we've
Another reason not to use Ford.
Yeah. Well, also on top of that, like it becomes down the quality part. We've used like whatever found on Amazon, cheap or shitty parts, and they will break within just maybe an hour into it.
Well,
and we're not talking tools, we're talking
you can break the quote unquote good stuff too.
Yeah, and so a lot of time, like when we get to the good stuff, we go to the junkyards, find what was an OEM part on there because that's still good.
Yeah.
So for example, like on those pulleys, the original Ford pulley actually I still have is still good, believe it or not. That thing is actually I think made out of real metal versus the ones that are
cast
the newer
aluminum.
ones are like pot metal.
Cast aluminum, yeah.
And actually the power steering pump was one of the moments I would say that's where Grant's creativity comes in, because he will, and this is just him having access to a lot of these things because of his job. He was able to create and weld this actual kind of bracket to actually be able to hold the power steering assembly in it. So that way when we put it on a vice grip, we're not putting the vices on the power steering pump assembly, but on the actual metal.
Yep.
When we couldn't get the pulley on, we had to go take a Taco Bell break, so we ended up getting some Baja Blast. And Grant just sits there like a madman thinking, dude, what if we heat up the metal on the pulley? Like, we'll heat it up, and then we freeze or in some way cool down the actual rod for the power steering assembly, and then we can just press it
right
in.
on there. Yep.
And I mean, I'm like, that sounds great on paper, but really? Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, where are we going to even heat it up? He's like, we have an oven. I thought, me being at the shop for so long, I thought he had this big old industrial oven.
Yeah.
No, it's
literally an oven. Yeah.
We heated,
on wheels.
We heated up the pulley for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
At the highest I think it could crank.
We did at 375.
Oh, 375.
375 for 30 minutes on bake.
And then all he did is then took a compressed air can, flipped it upside down, sprayed the actual where the actual
shaft.
The shaft is, and then we just seated the pulley, and then we just, put that thing down. It got down in 15 minutes or less.
No, when it was fully,
Should be a few
it was
seconds.
Seated.
seconds.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, it was immediately the fitment just was enough to grab where it just fell into place.
I think the 15 to 20 for me was just the entire process, it felt like.
Sure.
But you're not wrong. We were able to seat that thing so quickly, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, that's magic. It works so good.
But that's the kind of thing that he would come up with.
Well,
maybe,
yeah,
and maybe
that's-
other people, but I'm not me. Hell
Oh,
no.
right. That's from his experience as a mechanic. That's the shit you have to do, right?
There's not a chance I would ever come up with that idea.
Yeah.
You know, not selling myself short. There's no way I would have thought.
Right, unless you happen to see it somewhere on YouTube or who knows what, or
Which that's
and
how
then
he confirmed his idea.
You would still have been like, nah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah. No, that's pretty awesome. That's good stuff. So as far as you pour yourself another drink, it's just iced tea, people. It's just iced tea.
It's a sweet tea.
So you're still learning, and it's awesome. Your journey is taking shape. You're feeling more positive about working on cars and working on your cars and that kind of stuff. I think it's great. What advice would you give to somebody that is you 5 years ago?
Work on your car.
There you go.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Because the grass isn't always greener. I think a lot of people get lost in the fact that if something breaks down, they can just go get another thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is having a problem with this car. I'll just go buy another one.
Do you think that's our throwaway society? I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
We're
But
going down that one now? Yeah.
we'll skim it.
I'll
We'll
try.
skim
I'll try
across
not to,
it.
but
Yeah.
there
Let's
is.
just skim
You
it.
make a good point.
Yeah.
Because we are like that, right?
Yeah.
We don't value our property anymore because we just want to get something new every year.
Yep.
And that's why also there's the value of working on your car, but also like how many cars, for example, sit at junkyards that have perfectly great parts sitting on them
Absolutely.
that people don't want to go out and get because it's a junkyard.
Yeah.
You know, the tweeter speakers,
Junkyard gold, baby.
right? The tweeter speakers on my Ford Focus, they went out, right?
Yeah.
If I would have gotten replaced at like a big box store, it would have been like $50 to $100. I go to a pick and pull. Not only do I sit there and actually learn how to disassemble a door, so if I want to do the speakers myself in the door, I can, but also now I know what it looks like, you know, where the window actuator is and what to do all that. So that was a valuable lesson in itself, but it had two working tweeters because the car itself was front-end collisioned. So the tweeters were sitting inside the car with no moisture. Guess what? Paid like $5 for each of them, and they worked just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got the experience of taking somebody else's car apart before you take yours apart.
Right.
So you can figure out where all those goddamn clips are that
Yes.
you're going to break.
And I think the biggest thing is why it's important for people I'm not saying you have to be a full technician, right? I'm just saying
Tinker with it.
learn. Yeah, exactly.
go figure it
Because
out.
You'd be surprised, or I'd be surprised how often maybe something so little we think it's such a big deal.
Yep.
And then we throw it away and we realized, oh,
I could have fixed that.
I could have fixed that.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's just something that we're losing as an art form is that creativity.
Do you think, and we're still skimming the throwaway society thing, but do you think that is there enough in, how do I say this, the younger generation, is there enough drive or will or want to learn how to fix stuff? Or are we losing that due to, I don't know what, all the distractions that we have now as a society, and we all kind of fall into them a little bit, whether it be our phones or computers or video games or I don't know what else.
And you would think, though, that it would be easier, right? Because I'm not going to, okay, I'm going to be careful how I say this.
Sure.
I don't want to date you, Rob.
Date me, I don't care. I'm old. I'm fucking dirt.
Okay, in your time, the internet and all this stuff, when you were trying to figure out how to work on stuff,
Didn't exist.
So what did you have to do?
I tore it apart and I figured it out.
Right.
Or, well, I worked a little bit with my dad. He didn't work a lot on cars, but a little bit on motorcycles. We figured it out together. He has a mechanical skill and knowledge so that, we could figure it out together. I worked on motorcycles a lot with my friends, motorcycles, go-karts. When I got into cars, I just took it apart and tried things. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But yeah, it was just trial and error.
Right.
Yeah.
We are in an era, as you just said, with unprecedented access to everything. Everything. Even if things are, let's say, locked by a paywall, somebody probably put it somewhere else and you can go find it.
Yeah. Yep, gotcha.
So with all this access that we have, you would think people would be more enthusiastic to fix something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you would. You would hope, but
and
have
that's
we
what I
lost
say.
it?
I
Is
say
it not there though?
I don't know. And I tell people, I say, with that same enthusiasm that you're sitting there retaking your social media photo 50 times,
Right.
you probably could have figured out how to change your oil instead of paying somebody at your local, lube shop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Not
there
to
is
take business away from the lube shop. 'Cause
no, of
they
course
gotta
not.
make a buck too.
But there is something rewarding about
There
getting
is.
things fixed yourself.
And we're raising, oh boy, we're down a rabbit hole. We're raising a bunch of people that can't work on their own shit.
Yeah.
Whether it's their cars, whether it's simple as their bicycle, if anybody ever rides those anymore, their own house. Can you fix a plumbing problem? Can you rehang a door? Can you even paint a freaking wall?
And that's what I'm saying is we have so much access and yet nobody takes advantage of it. Or I won't say nobody because there's the people in this
There are
room
people that do.
Yeah.
takes advantage of it,
Yes.
and a lot of your listeners probably do too, but not enough.
Yeah, that's the part that worries me. There still are people, like even my son. I worked with him on dirt bikes and that kind of stuff. And as he was growing up, he had a vague interest in working on stuff. As a senior project, he tore down an engine and put it back together as, a learning experience, right? Did a great job. Now he's a diesel mechanic.
Right.
He took it to the next level and he loves it. And I think that's awesome. But there's a whole bunch of people in that generation that have no interest in that whatsoever.
And honestly, if you don't even want to be interested in just say learning how to work on stuff because let's say that's not your hobby,
Yep.
then think of it this way. Things are so expensive right now.
Save yourself a buck.
Maybe
Yeah.
hold yourself. Yeah, exactly. This is not related to cars, but I think it's a good way to represent this idea. Grant has a washing machine right now that the washing machine he has in his house, I actually had when I was a child. And it does sound weird. It was my favorite washing machine because it actually washed the clothes good, unlike a lot of the ones that exist today. And he had one previously where essentially the spin cycle wouldn't engage. Well, being Grant, took it apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's figure out what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's figure out why this.
It
broke.
literally was this little triangular it almost looks like a fidget spinner
Yeah.
coupling that connects from the engine to the transmission, basically to a degree where it engages that spin cycle.
Okay.
$10
There you go. Fixed it.
For a pack
instead
of five.
of him spending $500+ on a new washing
new
machine.
one, yeah.
And guess what? If I would have had even that level of creativity that he did when I was 8 years old, when that washing machine went down,
Yeah.
we would have been able to fix that one and still have it probably.
Let me expand on that one because that's the other thing.
No,
Is
I'm with you.
with that specifically, you were there with me, and it took us about an hour because I had to kind of take it apart and just kind of visualize and kind of see what was wrong. What's everything doing?
You got to learn how it works first
Yeah. Right.
in order
And-
to see what it's doing or not doing that it should be doing.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the thing that also helped was that once that washer failed on a different thing where I was like, okay,
Yep.
it's going to be two cosmos. There's another washer that's in a storage that's already broken that my uncle had. Same exact problem was the coupling. That was done in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
'cause you
be
already
able-
knew.
And
Exactly.
that's the good one. Because
Yeah.
that one actually, like I said, I don't know why I'm getting excited about washing machines, but it's because I'm old.
It's the working on stuff part.
That and sometimes stuff from the past is actually better.
Yeah.
And this particular washing machine that he has, guess what? It washes clothes better than the one he had that died.
Yeah.
And if people just had even that ounce of enthusiasm to take stuff apart, right? And you can even relate it to things that are in your own life, right? Your gaming consoles, your cell phones. Just doing that kind of stuff. If stuff breaks down, instead of buying another thing,
Yep.
you know what?
Throw it away and buy a new one.
We would be better off, I think. But you can only encourage people so much.
I agree. Yeah, I do. I mean, I feel bad for people that are not mechanically inclined at all.
I mean, that was me
And-
5 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a certain amount of they don't want to learn it because that's a whole nother thing. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got life and this and that. And they're just like, it's too much.
Rob,
And that's not my area, right?
right.
So those are the people that either throw it away and get a new one, washing machine, car, whatever it is, or they pay somebody to come and fix it. And sometimes that's a little cheaper, a little better way to go,
Yeah.
and they're supporting local economy. Those repair guys got to have something to do.
Sure.
But, I don't know. I just feel bad for the people that pay through the nose because they don't take the initiative to even try to
Yeah.
fix it. And there are definitely, like, I've same issue with a washer or dryer or whatever. I've had to take those apart, and there's a lot of computer boards in there anymore. You can't really see what's going on,
Right.
but I've got a little background in that, and I can tell if there's a signal supposed to be going here and it doesn't, and this and that. And I'm like, all right, I'll take a shot in the dark. I'll order a $100 electronic board and plug it in. Does it work? Fixed it. We're still going today,
Yeah.
But it's a,
The one thing I was going to say that we see from this next generation, that you and me have talked about on the show, and the same with Jeremy a few times, is that the next generation, or even people of our generation, complain that they don't have the space, there's no tools. We live in an apartment. How can I work on this?
Yes, we have touched
And
on
Antonio has tackled all those odds, and I'd love to hear like
tell
how
us about that.
you keep your tools or how you work on projects, being in kind of a modern living situation.
Your
I have 2 cars.
Your apartment living?
Yeah, I was gonna say I also have 2 cars, so one's like a storage car. It feels like.
Yeah. Is it at a storage unit kind of
No.
thing? Or okay.
So I have one of my best friends, Arthur. He thankfully gave me the space to store my Mustang at his place.
Nice. Okay.
And I thank for him every day for that because
You got to have friends, man.
yeah, absolutely. But the big thing I would say when it comes to just being able to work on stuff, sometimes you know what, it sucks, and the apartment says you can't do it.
But do it anyway.
I'm gonna do it anyways.
Yeah.
It just sucks because if they come over and say, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
Got to
addressing
fix it.
this.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Well, you can't do that." I'm like, "Well, you literally said you can't have junker cars sitting here, and I'm trying to get this car so it can move, right?" So
Yeah.
we're in like
Yeah.
caught in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Catch 22 here.
Yeah.
Do you want a junker or do you want me to fix it and be able to drive it?
Sometimes, if you're in a parking garage and something happens, you have to just go there and just start diagnosing it, right?
Yep.
Anywhere if there's an open space, if I don't have Grant Shop accessible, or if I have a friend who's my car is there, I can have space to do it. That's where I've had to do it.
Sure.
You know,
You got to lean on them. Lean on your friends.
lean on your
sometimes.
friends, or just open space where no one's around. And if hey, if a sheriff's officer or cop comes over and asks you what you're doing, you'd be like, hey, this is happening. I'm sorry that this is happening, but
It's
I need to
temporary,
get it done. Yeah, I
you
need
know?
to get this figured out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, oil changes, thankfully, like stuff like that, right? I have friends and I have Grant's space where I can go do that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like right now, for example, I have a headlight problem. I may need to diagnose that right where I'm at because what if I can't see?
Yeah, for sure. Right?
In this case, thankfully, it's only one headlight. And long story short, the pigtail that connects into the light bulb actually completely burnt out. It's melted.
Yeah.
So now I have to learn about grounds and.
I think that's
currency.
a Mustang issue because Grant ran into
This
that
is on the
last
Focus.
This is on my Focus, though.
Oh,
But it might be just a Ford problem.
It could
at this
be.
point.
I don't want to hear that, but okay.
Well,
Could be.
And Grant, he's like, "Hey, perfect. This is now your next step, right? Now
It's
you
a
get
car
to learn
issue.
about electrical."
Oh, electrical.
Yeah, because at
Because
some point,
It's a demon.
At some point, being any kind of mechanic, whether you're into cars, into general projects, whatever, wiring and electricity you have to get into if you want to.
Eventually. Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's nice that this problem happened because it's not saying a full TCM failed or
Yeah.
it's a full pigtail of a wire harness that just a million wires.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
this
like
is-
an introductory to electrical.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why now, leading back to where do I keep all my tools? I pretty much carry them with me at all times.
Yeah.
It's just nice to have. I mean, I've had
Oh, man,
moments
yeah.
where someone who I know will be like, "Oh, I need this. I don't have tools or whatever."
No, I got it in my truck.
Here you go.
Or in my car, yeah.
Right. Or adjusting headlights, right? For some vehicles, you need like a very specific Phillips, or you need a very specific
Torques
flat
or whatever.
torque or whatever, and I have those.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have them because then I can also use them for just other things, right? Maybe I need it for something else. Oh, I have this. This works for this.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's just I feel like I'm just always on the go with everything now.
Yeah.
Because of it.
Just keeping it with you.
Yeah.
There is going to be a point, though, I know, and we've talked about this, where your tool collection is going to get so big where you're going to need a toolbox.
Yes.
And that's limited, I think, to your
Yep.
current living situation.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that you grow into, right? So right now you've got a small kit you just carry with you, and you're going to accumulate over time. And pretty soon you've got a little bigger toolbox in your apartment or whatever. So you've got the overflow sitting in there.
Right, exactly.
And then, eventually you get a bigger place and then your toolbox grows. That's one of those overtime things. You just kind of grow with it.
Ooh, and it'll keep me organized because right now, for example, I lost my 10mm wrench again.
That damn 10.
For I don't know what it is. It's like the 10th time I've lost it or something.
That's
or more.
hilarious.
And I always find it, but right now I'm actually scared that I did actually lose it pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where it is.
Yeah, that's funny. It's always the 10.
Yeah.
10 because you need it. On your journey, What's the most unexpected thing that you have learned working on your project cars?
Unexpected. That's a tough one.
Unexpected.
I don't know if we've really ever had anything unexpected. Well, if it's unexpected, I feel like it's because it
Something
just
you
didn't go
didn't-
according to plan.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that.
You know?
Something that, I mean, you dove into, say, the rack and pinion project, and then it turned into something else. Oh, I didn't realize I was going to go down this rabbit hole.
Hold up, Rob. Grant's got this look. He looks about to explode. Grant,
Always.
Grant, go ahead.
Always.
Unexpected.
So the thing is about Grant and doing these podcasts, you can't look at him.
I know, and I wasn't trying
Because
to.
he will make faces the entire time.
I wasn't trying to, but
And
he
he's
looked like he
just-
was about to jump out of his chair.
Yeah, I know. And he wants to burst. And half the time he does, So you just don't look at him.
All right, just burst for this one. What is it that you want? And
You
then,
said
and then I'll segue.
We've never had an unexpected thing, right?
Well, no, I said unexpected just to me means like it didn't go according to plan.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of times of that, but like, what are you thinking? What's your thought?
Excursion. Ripping the V10 out in that transmission.
Oh, no, but he's
24
talking,
hours?
but he's talking about my project.
Yeah, that's your project.
That
That's not
project though
his.
was good for me though to a
I-
degree because I actually got to witness how to disassemble an engine and transmission.
Did you get hands-on?
Yeah.
I would say that was my very first time out in general with him on something like that. So it was very more like I'm watching him do it, and then if he trusted me to do something, he'd be like, "Here, go ahead."
Did you just feed him caffeine and sugar and watch him go?
This wasn't even on my truck. This was us pulling an engine and transmission off of someone's truck in their yard.
The beneficial
Yeah, you
thing
told me that story.
about that too for me was I didn't know what tools really were. So when he's saying, "Give me a quarter inch this, 3/8 that, or half inch that," I'm over here looking. I'm like, "What the hell
What
are
the
you
hell?
talking about?"
Yeah.
The only thing I could recognize, right, is give me a 17 millimeter wrench or give me a 12. Yeah, because they're right there and it's labeled. But
Yep.
in terms of just the ratchets and then the correct sockets and then
Right.
deep,
What
shallow
drive size and all that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was a good
that's a learning.
experience.
That's a
for
learning
me
process.
just to see that because
Yeah.
I was mostly giving out tools. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm familiarizing myself with what these are. And
Yeah.
then if Grant said, hey, I can trust you to do this, I would go under and go do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of unexpected, I would say probably the most headache thing that we ever had on my projects was probably the rack and pinion
Yeah.
because it's just I struggled. I can't put Grant in it because I was the lead on it. Grant was helping me with it. It was struggling with the coils, but also with the actual rods that connect to the top, where it connects to the power steering pump. That was just. I mean, I thought I couldn't fit those in. They obviously fit in there, right? The nuts will screw, but Grant's over. I'm watching as I'm struggling. Grant then comes over and says, it's all about your placement of your hands, placement of the wrenches, and just not getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm over here getting frustrated. It's not getting done, and Grant's over here. Then he does it in like 10 seconds.
I'm like, you need to step away and kind of just refresh your mind. You're too focused in on something.
That's what I would say is been beneficial. Is I now can recognize when I need to step away from something and be like, let me clear my head and figure out what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the rack and pinion was probably the hardest one because, like I said, when I watched those videos, it looked so easy. And it was probably the hardest job I had done at the time.
Yeah.
And that was only a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a learning, unexpected thing you're learning about yourself, not just when to step away, but that things, even though they look easy when somebody else does it, doesn't mean it's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were doing brakes when I first bought that Mustang. Grant actually challenged me at the time because I had done the brakes already on my Focus at that point, mostly by myself, but not fully. So he said, "Hey, let's take those skills and let's see how fast you can get this done."
This was drum brakes.
Well,
Right? No, that was the other one.
This is
Yeah,
us
yeah,
doing
okay.
the Mustang at this
Okay,
point.
yeah.
But the drum brakes, that's a whole other mess too, which that's an unexpected thing too. But he challenged me to be like, how fast can you get this done? And I'm over here thinking I'm all hot shit. I can get it done.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I think Grant, without even trying, because he wasn't even fully trying, he got his entire side done of brakes in 15 minutes?
15 minutes, torque spec, anything that needed to be with
no
NICs
cutting corners.
or with thread lock.
Comes over and checks on me. I don't think I'm even halfway done my first wheel.
You didn't even take it off.
No, I didn't. I was struggling.
Yeah.
Segueing back to the drums, I think with that one too, it was something like it looked relatively simple when I was reading about it and then also watching these videos on how to take the drum brakes out, and it was everything but that. because I was getting so frustrated with how the placement of the shoes and the springs and everything, how it connects.
Yep.
And it would just, it frustrated the shit out of me.
Yeah, when we first did that on drums on his car, it took him about 2 hours just to trying to figure it out. And eventually I helped him a little bit get there. And he's like, how would you do this, Grant? Let me see how you properly do this. And I'm like, I'll have this done in 10 minutes. And you laugh. You're like, I'm going to time you. There's no way. And from the moment I started going, like his face just kind of looked like he's just watching a magic trick as it's just taken apart. Yep. And he's like, how are you doing this? I'm like, it's just experience going through this. You're going to get there.
Yeah.
That's a fact. But like, it doesn't come, you have
Well,
to
it
go
is
through the trials.
It is a lot of experience. And then eventually you just get to where you can look at it and you're like, okay, it goes here, here, there. You know, you just kind of know how things come apart, and how things go together.
And the big thing is, Grant can pride himself on this, that he doesn't cut corners. So if it's getting done in that allotted time that he says, it's going to get torqued. It's going to get all the proper, lubrication and whatever it needs. So it will be as if he's doing it for himself, for his vehicle.
It's getting back to, my opinion,
it's the way it should be
getting
done.
back to factory spec.
Yeah.
It's getting back to, because for me, either if I do it for a customer or do it for myself for a race car, I don't either A, want that car to come back because it should be done right the first time, or B, I don't want to have a problem on the track where now I'm putting my life at risk because a bolt wasn't tightened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real
fast, I want to touch on the unexpected fixes, Antonio. Mm-hmm. Grant fix. How many times have you brought that up?
Oh, yeah. The amount of times, for example, like I said, this is the level of creativity, right? The amount of times where we're trying to do something and it's not working to what the book says. Well, toss the book out. Let's do a Grant fix. Let's build something, or let's do it this way. And
sometimes you have to.
Right. Yep. And that's a big thing, is that
get creative.
Exactly. He would it's encouraging the fact that you can't just follow exactly what it says. I mean, yes, that's your guide, and you want to obviously do that.
Yep.
But sometimes
you can't.
You can't.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And how many Grant? I know there was at least one Grant fix we did on my Mustang, but I can't remember. If you can think of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because I think what we had at the time.
Wait, no, I know a Grant. It's with the gas pedal.
Yeah. Yes.
That was a Grant fix.
Mm-hmm. So with the gas pedal, for example, on that one, those cables stretch on that one, and there's no really good way to get a new one after that. Replacement onto that.
For the throttle cable, yeah.
Yeah. So he was complaining. I'm like, you can get more horsepower. It's not opening up completely. It's opening, but not so much. So I'm like, let's just put a couple zip ties behind it. That'll decrease the distance between the pedal and the back of where the throttle cable goes, which means it opens the butterflies open more. Mm-hmm. So, 50-cent fix on there, stays on there, won't move. Put a couple zip ties to reinforce itself, and now he's got all his power back and everything else.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right, we're gonna shift again.
Third gear.
Third gear now.
Third gear.
Okay.
Just not reverse.
We haven't put it in reverse.
No.
All right.
I haven't been talking.
So, you've caught the bug. You are into cars. We kind of know your next
phase.
Yeah, sort of your next phase. Do you daydream a little bit about what your next car should be? Do you catch yourself looking at other cars going, I kind of like that?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
There isn't at least once or twice that I don't put myself.
Are you on Marketplace all the time?
Not as much as I'd like to be, because I would mostly say I'm on just the bigger websites.
Okay.
Just searching there and being like, oh, what's it trending at today?
Okay.
Because another daily, for example, that I thought of getting was getting the Dodge Magnum, but specifically the SRT 8.
How much did you want to spend in fuel?
Oh, it's a Dodge. I mean, it is what it is. Here's the thing, and I will proudly say this out loud.
Careful.
Fuel at this point, if you're really that worried about how much your gas is costing, then maybe you shouldn't own a car. Just throwing that out there.
No, I think for your daily, I think it's reasonable to want.
If it's a car you enjoy, I'm doing this only for enjoyment.
But I've put myself in the situation. So my Ford Focus is a 12-gallon tank, and I even had put myself right. I'd even put myself to saying that if gas had reached the point where it was $10 a gallon,
oof.
Right?
Yeah.
10 times 12 is what?
120.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
I've prepared myself to, if it hits that point, I'm still going to be fine spending on gas.
Okay.
And of course, I know that with a Magnum, it's a Hemi, so obviously, and it's the big tank.
Yeah.
But I'm consenting to the fact, at least Rob, in my opinion, that I'm buying this car. I want to enjoy this car. So guess
that's
what?
fine.
As part of that,
That's fine.
it's the gas.
Yeah.
So, and that's the part
Not
that
everybody can afford that, but
No, and I get that. And
Yeah.
that's the part that gets me. Sometimes when people complain about gas prices or gas, how much it's costing to fill up their car, and I'm like,
Right.
well, then why did you buy that car if you knew it was going to be like that?
they would complain about any car. Some people just like to complain.
Right. And that's why sometimes when people complain about things like that, I'm like, maybe you just shouldn't own a car then if you're really complaining that much about gas.
Go ride a Metro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you my Metro card. It's great.
All right. Well,
But that's the car that I
That was-
mostly look at
yeah.
because
Even still?
oh yeah,
Really?
absolutely.
That car's going to be so much fun when we manual swap it.
Interesting.
I've done the research.
That's done the research. Yeah, that's the thing is like I will look at a car right that I'm interested in, like the Magnum, because there's one that comes with the Hemi that's just rear wheel drive, but then there's
All-wheel drive.
an all wheel drive version, which I believe is a different Hemi, correct?
It's
Grant?
the 5.7.
Okay. So yeah, it's the 5.7 engine, but it's all-wheel drive. And Grant will have like these, you call them like the weird, the bubbles. He'll call you in the middle of the day, and you didn't expect a call from him. He'd be like, dude, what if we manual swap this car?
And you're like, how would you do? And I would go down this rabbit hole, say, well, this connects to this because that's what they did from factory, which means this will mount up to this. And then that means that this can go through. Or
Spends so much time doing that stuff. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? It's the middle of the day. You have time to be looking up these cars because he does it to me too.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And he sends me all kinds of posts throughout the day. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
it's the
should be
squirrel
working.
going in different places.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Anyway,
yeah.
that's another rabbit hole.
Right, but I get it, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a V8. It's going to cost a lot more. It's going to be expensive for the fuel, but also, of course, it's a Dodge, so it's probably going to have maybe some electrical gremlins.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
like to
yeah.
think though, with those mid 2000s, they weren't that bad.
No, I don't know. I don't know about the Magnums.
But
No idea.
I just like it.
But
It's it's a really cool car. It's a super long wagon, and
Yeah,
it's
it
just
is.
not what
It's a really big wagon.
you're not used to. It's different. It pops.
For a daily, it's something that Antonio's talked. He's like, it'd be nice to have an all-wheel drive, it'd be nice to have a big V8, it'd be nice to have that extra room in the back. And that's one of the reasons that came up.
Yeah.
And then he's talked about, well, but the only problem is you could never row through gears from that. I'm like, well, I mean, they never did, but
Yeah.
let me put this and this and this way.
That would never happen. You'd never do it. Antonio couldn't cut up his car. Let you cut it up after he bought one.
Yeah, probably not.
No.
But I mean, it's one of those things like you have these ideas, and then he's like, oh, we could do this, this, and this to it.
Yeah. He's
But-
full of ideas.
I know he is.
Yeah.
But I would say I still, mostly for me, I feel like there's a lot of like old Dodges that I still look at because I liked them and I
Yeah.
never got a chance to ever drive one. So the Magnum was one. The SRT Caliber for the Dodge also. Then there was what is it? The Dodge Neon SRT4. Love that car. I don't care what anybody says. I know people think it's a clunker.
It is.
It's a great car.
All right.
But it sticks with who I am. you
Yeah,
know?
no, that's fine.
These are the cars that I like.
Right.
I get it. Toyota 86, Subaru, Impreza, all that good stuff. Great. Love that for you.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Right.
Like my cars built in the United States. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, some of those are actually built in the U.S. too.
They are. 100%.
How about your autocross life? We've talked about what you might move to, racing your Mustang again. Let's go back to when you started autocrossing. Like, what was that like for you? What was it? Was it welcoming? Were you nervous? Were you intimidated by it? How'd that go?
I think it honestly sucked in the beginning. I mean, you show up. Okay, here's the
But
thing.
was it fun?
No, it was fun.
Yeah.
It sucked in the beginning because I'm looking at all these great cars, right? And here I am showing up in a little passenger car. What does that say?
A lot of people do that.
I know people do that, but there is a level I just felt very out of place, right?
Okay.
And then especially when Grant's, if he's friends with people there, right, and he introduced me to them, they're all great people. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yep.
But they're all driving like these high horsepower cars, and then they'll be like, "What are you driving?" "Oh, I'm driving that."
Yeah.
What is it? It's a Ford Focus. Is it an ST? No, it's an SE.
Yeah. It's an economical model.
Yeah. But what speaks volumes is even though it was your first time on track and stuff, the amount of how far you push that car from all your country road driving experience and stuff really translated well to the track.
It did, and actually the SE, why I love it so much. I mean, yes, I did break down at ORP in the middle of my third lap, but in terms of what I have learned through that car, I've spun that car out, or had it kick out on me many times. I've three-wheeled that car on autocross courses, and I've really have just felt more in tune what it feels like to be in tune with a car. Mm-hmm. So as I got better, and people would, I would start taking passengers, people would be like, you need to move on to something else, or like, you're really pushing the shit out of this passenger car. You need to just get something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were right. I mean, obviously the car lasted for so long and then it finally broke down and I had to get it fixed. And now it no longer sees an autocross course.
Right.
That's why I have my Mustang. But in the beginning, yeah, it was intimidating because you're showing up with this little 140, 160 horsepower car against all these cars that are just built. Right?
Well, yeah, but all those people, majority of them, they started years ago and they've built up to that and they've got, they weren't first timers to it.
Correct.
So that's what I was kind of curious about, is that first timer's view of getting out there and, how's that feel and that kind of stuff. Because everybody has a first time.
It's intimidating because you feel like you're taking somebody else, to a degree, that's how I felt. I'll speak for me. It feels like you're taking away somebody else's valuable time from racing, right?
Yeah.
Like by you registering with your passenger car. This is me. It's just me. I'm not
Yeah.
anybody else.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of feeling.
And it's maybe because I have a lot of self-esteem issues. I don't want to obviously get into that, but it's this whole thing that like I felt like I was taking somebody else's valuable slot away by me registering. That's someone else with a car that is made for this isn't. Which then, when you start meeting these people, they all take you under your wing and they're like, "No, dude, have fun. Who cares?
Yeah,
like enjoy it." Like
absolutely, your spot is your spot.
And how many people, and you've pointed this out too, and other people pointed it out, it's like how many people have high horsepower cars, but then because they don't know how to drive it, they're not at that level, they're not enjoying the car. They're just kind of
out there,
which is fine. I mean, do you
absolutely.
do? At the end of the day, it's you do you. Right. If I'm having fun in my car, which I was as I started gradually getting to learn the car, that was great, and it put a lot more confidence in me. By about, I would say, the third event, that's kind of where I was like, okay, I can finally start doing something with this and start, learning more about it. But also I feel now like I belong here to a point.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a few to feel like, to feel like you belong, like you said, and you start to meet more people and you see the same faces and you're like, oh yeah, I've seen these guys and that kind of stuff. And you feel like, okay, I can be here.
Yeah. Like I think within the first, when I started racing with, are we allowed to drop club names or no?
Go ahead.
Yep. Okay. When I was
no, not that one.
When I was with BCA, George, he drives a Ford Focus ST.
Yep.
It's named Pepper. And I think within like the first or second event, we were already talking. And obviously, he drives a manual and he obviously isn't super oriented with my car, but there was a lot of opportunities where I would, sit with him and he would be able to give me pointers and I could take some of what he was doing and apply it to my car. Right. Because they're similar, but they're not. And then even what he did one time, I think I gave him the keys and he was like, he wanted to show me what the car could do. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot that car could still do. And this is, mind you, obviously he has no control over the transmission. So he's obviously doing as best he can. At the time I was running Continental street tires.
Well, and in a car that he's never driven.
Right. Yep. So, and Grant did that to me too when I first bought new tires for the car because I needed new tires. He's like, let me show you what the car can do. We're going out on the backcountry roads and he's like, there's a lot you can do with this car. Yep. It's not this passenger princess car. Okay, maybe it is. That people think it is. But it was, you start, building that community, right? You branch off with one person, they then refer you to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, the really good part of my time with them. And then, obviously now that I race with the Viper and Corvette Club, now I have my Mustang, that's actually where I was most intimidated, not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
The first, because when I was given my invite, I had told Grant, I said, hey, Grant, I have this V6 and I can barely, at the time, I think I barely knew how to drive manual.
Yeah.
Barely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I told him, I am not going to embarrass myself in front of all these people. They all have high horsepower cars. They're here to, milk the shit out of their cars. And me here with this little puny little thing.
Hey, you're there to milk the shit out of your car too.
I am. I am. But I told him the one fear that I had with that car, and thankfully it never happened and I'm much more versed in manual, was that I'm going to stall out as Robin or Jim says, go, right on the line.
Yeah.
I was scared of that.
You would not be the first one to do that.
And that's what he said too.
I will say the one thing that I think helped you at the time that you've talked about was Jim being like, we've got you. We'll help you out.
Everybody was so welcoming and super inviting that I felt safe. And I think even at just the first event with them and then after that, I just kept trying to push that car as hard as I could. Mm-hmm. And that's all I can ask. Yeah. Right?
And everybody out there will root for you to do it too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or Robin would, what she would say to me when she would be, one time she said to me, because Grant had given me the keys to Liger. I think I was on my like second lap with it, and it just first time I'd ever autocrossed that car.
Yep.
Right. And she was like, you're friends with Grant. Don't be a pussy.
Yep. Yep.
And she wasn't wrong. And I just became a lot more confident because I was in that moment when he gave me the keys. I was embarrassed that I was going to do something crazy with that car or not be as fast as I want to be. And it's not my car. It was my first time driving that car in general.
Yeah. And driving it hard.
And I did spin out the car, which was fine. It was a great lesson, but I was just more worried about when I killed the car because it wouldn't turn over that I actually killed it. But overall, I would say my experience now with autocrossing is once you get that first event done,
Yep.
I think you start kind of feeling a little bit more better about yourself that you can do this. But also, I think one important thing that you need to do, you need to make some connections with people. And honestly, I think most people are pretty okay if you ask them, hey, do you mind if I ride with you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the amount of times I think that I asked for rides when I was first starting off, I mean, I was scared. 'Cause you show up, Rob, in your Corvette, I'm going to be like, oh, hey, Rob, I don't know you, but can I ride with you?
Yeah.
To me, that just feels like a really weird thing.
It is. Yeah. It does feel weird. It feels weird to me even now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I think when I was still learning at the time, Grant was like, hey, my instructor, Tim, is here. Why don't you go ask Tim for a ride?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to go ask him. I think he eventually just asked him for me.
Right.
And then Tim was like, yeah, hop in.
Yeah.
It just scared the shit out of me. It was my first time ever riding with someone like that. I swear to Christ, I needed some new underwear. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, he'll give you a ride.
I love it. Now, I mean, I love it. I love if I get in the car with him, it's great.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, riding with like Tim or Bert, oh my God.
Yeah.
It just scared the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. But that's so beneficial because you get to see how they drive, see what they're doing, but also it gives you a sense of just, hey, they're letting you ride with you now. Maybe you can create that connection with somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really why I asked, because anybody out there that is on the fence about trying autocross, friggin' go do it. You will make connections.
Yeah.
You don't even have to try, really. Not that hard. You will meet people. You will get other ride-alongs. Yeah. You will meet great people that want to see you succeed. They'll give you pointers, Don't worry about being the first timer.
Be a regular, cool person.
Yeah.
There's someone there for you.
Yep. That was one thing I wanted to bring up was on the fence of autocrossing.
Right.
Because I can't tell you for how long we were, Antonio, I'm like, you need to come out and not come out and come out. Like, what was your tipping point? What was like, okay, this is when now I'm finally okay to start going?
Grant got annoying. Grant got annoying enough that I was just like, all right,
fine, I'll do it.
Well, and he had because how many times, I'm not going to say, annoying is not the right word. Maybe
yes, it is.
There comes a point, and I'm guilty of this too, right? Where I have encouraged somebody to go do something, right? And be like, hey, go do this. Come on. Yeah. And then they won't do it. And then when they finally do it, they're like, dude, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, I told you.
Yeah.
Same thing with Grant.
Yeah.
Where it was, I didn't want to do it, but specifically with like the Viper and Corvette Club, the reason why I went with him that time was, I love the Viper. The Viper's my favorite car. And he's like, yeah, dude, there's so many of these Vipers. And I had only seen, I think, maybe 1 or 2 pictures of them. And then from there, I was like, dude, I'm sold.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's how but honestly, with the first autocross, which would have been with WMC, that was partially also for me to just really figure out how to, enjoy the Ford Focus that I had and just kind of figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
And autocrossing also as a whole, which I don't think people talk about enough, it is very valuable in terms of your actual daily driving.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. We've talked about that too. It's, my goodness, if you've got teenage kids, go autocross with them. They will learn car control that you will not learn anywhere else.
100%.
It is so worth it.
And it's hard for people to concept that too.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because people think of it, all they hear is autocross racing. They hear racing.
Yeah.
It's
controlled environment. It's car control. Oh my goodness. It's if I would have known about it when my kids were at driving age, totally would have had them out there doing it.
100%.
Had no idea.
It's taught me, like I said, car control, but also just, they tell you this, of course, when you're doing the driver's ed, like, hey, always look ahead. You want to look ahead.
Oh, yeah.
What is it, like 10 seconds ahead?
Yeah.
That's what they tell you. Autocross enforces that because you have to make sometimes those split decisions where you're going through a slalom and you got to go, okay, you got to look ahead, but where's the pointer cone going? And then where are you going after that?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And I think that's so valuable from that aspect that people don't, it should be promoted more like that,
Absolutely.
And I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Well, also think about this. Like one of the things, your car, Antonio, doesn't have ABS. And we've had situations where you're on course and have to brake and either flat spot it or just kind of out of control. If you're on the road, that's a tree. That's a ditch.
Yeah.
On autocross, that's a cone.
Yeah.
That environment where you're able to push the extreme and learn what's
Safely.
safely what those limits are.
Absolutely.
And also, like the few times, because there's plenty of yields in the Beaverton area where, especially with my Mustang, because it's a rear-wheel drive and it doesn't have, like you said, these features. Sometimes I'll go in a little bit too hot, and I can feel the back end want to kick out. And one time, Grant was
Completely at legal speeds, though, mind you all.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
No, but also at the same time, Grant's right behind me, and he sees that the car's kicking out. But because I had practiced enough on an autocross course how to correct that, I was able to correct that safely, get the car back in line. Even Grant was just like, dude, I'm really proud of you that you were able to think on your feet and deal. I'm like, yeah, because...
Well, it becomes second nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that...
You don't have to think about it. It just happens.
Exactly. It happened at a turnaround on a closed course, but now that it's on the road, because it can happen...
Oh, yeah.
Being able to just correct that and not freak out and have the car spin out.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's such good practice. I would like to see more people just do it in general. Go out, go to a couple of events, 2 or 3, learn some car control.
Yeah.
I wonder how many fewer accidents we would actually have if people learned some car control.
How many F40s would be saved because of that?
A lot. A lot.
Or how about all
on the
those
screen here a little bit ago?
Or how about all those Gen 1 Vipers that were crashed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over what was it? First year was over half of them were crashed because of that.
Yeah.
Sad.
Awesome. What's your long-term goals for autocross? I am assuming you're going to keep racing. Maybe you're going to step out into some other types of racing. You got any goals? Anything you're looking forward to? Is something in the back of your mind is like, you know what, I'd really like to try someday? I want to try time trials.
Mm-hmm.
I want to try
at this point to get faster.
Lucky dog racing. Something.
He's trying to convince you to join our team.
I just want to
actually not, but
I just want to get faster.
Okay,
that's the big thing for me.
Faster at autocross.
Just get faster at autocross.
Okay.
Be more comfortable, but also maybe be more comfortable with other cars too, right? Because you don't want to be a one-trick.
How many other cars have you been able to drive out there? Because that is a thing, and it comes slowly. That really does. I'm not one to put myself out there and ask to drive cars, unlike some other people that we know that it drives me insane.
We actually talked about that the other day, and it drives you insane, right?
There's a particular person that it drives me insane.
I understand that. And it's me and Antonio were talking the other day, I think it's if you hand the keys over to someone and say, will you drive my car? I think that's totally appropriate.
Totally appropriate. Mm-hmm.
Approaching someone and say, let me drive your car. Can I drive your car?
Yes.
It's
inappropriate.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a very good friend of that person,
there you go.
That's okay.
Even then.
Okay.
For me personally.
Yes, for some people, yes, I agree, because that's their pride and joy. That's their baby. You don't go up to them and say, hey, let me go be on your car.
I mean, Grant gave me Liger, and he didn't even give me a choice.
Yeah.
And then I think he had also told Robin, and basically both of them were like, take Liger out. Like, stop being a pussy.
Yeah.
You know? And I did.
But that's Grant. He will do that to his best people. He wants people to experience his car.
And I understand.
Not everybody's like that.
And that's the only car that I've driven on the autocross course that wasn't mine, aside from my Ford Focus. Because there is nothing on God's green earth that would make me feel worse that if I took, let's say, somebody's Viper from the club that I asked, and I spun it out or crashed it, something like that. Because, I mean...
Did something dumb.
Yeah. I would feel horrible.
Yeah.
Because I know for a lot of these people, that's their pride and joy.
Absolutely.
And I can respect that.
Yeah.
So, and even if someone gave me the keys, honestly, that car scares me enough where I could not, I would have to refuse. And Grant had pointed out, well, maybe you shouldn't because it could be seen maybe
you can
in
also
bad taste, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe,
I'm not trying to be
don't refuse, but don't go 10/10.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Learn the car.
Yeah.
That's the problem I have with a lot of people, that if you're nice enough to say, hey, you want to take a lap in my car, do a couple, and they go out and they go 10/10 and they spin and they, flat spot your tires and this and that. It's like, dude,
no, and see,
you don't even know the car and you're going to do that?
There is not a chance I would ever want to do that because you're
I've
not wrong.
I've seen people do that.
I would never.
Can I ask then? Were you holding back then when you drove Liger when the competition was happening, or were you actually 10?
No, I was actually driving your car.
Okay, and that's appropriate because I asked you to.
I know, exactly. And that's the difference too. Is yes, the first lap or two, I need to get a feel for the car, the brakes, the steering and that kind of stuff. But after that, once I feel like I'm comfortable, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
But that's what you want me to do too.
Yeah.
And that was the same with Grant. I think on the first lap when I took Liger, I was taking it easy. I shaved off 10 seconds off the time that I was doing versus my Mustang to his. And then as I kept going,
a big jump.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And as I kept going back up to the start line, Robin's like, "All right, now that you know where you're doing, push it,
go for it."
Yeah.
But that's when, and this is the fear that I had. Right on the third one, And Grant and I guess Tim were giggling about this because they're like, he's going to spin out. Watch, he's going to spin out.
Well, you got to find that edge.
Let me set this up.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's the third lap. I know my car really well and know, okay, you're supposed to cool down the tires because they're going to be hot.
Yep.
I was watching. He wasn't doing that.
RE71 problems.
Exactly. I'm like, he's not airing up tires, not doing this. I'm like, he's going to, and I told him, like, watch, coming through us on this straight, this is where it's going to happen. And I know it is. Him flying down like clockwork, spinning out right in front of me, the look of horror on his face. And I'm
well, the look of joy first because I spun,
Yeah.
but the look of horror happened because I couldn't get the car to crank over, and I was scared that I broke Liger.
Right.
That was
your first thought. Not I'm
was
dead. It's oh god, we got to fix it.
That was the fear, right? That I just said. It's like I'm breaking somebody else's car. I don't care if it's my best friend's car. It's the fact is it's not mine.
Exactly.
Thankfully, Bert was there, and Bert's like, "Hey, just give it a second," and he said, "Hit the throttle and then turn the car on." Sure enough, it turned over. I got it back. Derek comes over and he's like, looks like your tire's a little warm there, buddy.
Yeah.
And he goes in there and he feels them and they're
Melty.
hot. Yeah, they're hot to touch.
Yeah.
But that was like the first example. Like if that would have happened with somebody else's car, your car,
Yep.
or somebody's Viper, I'd be horrified.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But at least with Liger, it's like, well,
And also,
fix it.
on my thing, like why I didn't, I knew he was going through and didn't tell him beforehand. I'm like, he's going to learn because he didn't wipe it down beforehand. I'm like, let's see. I'm going to let him understand if you don't get to that.
That's Grant's meanness. I would have told you, hey, you need to keep
hold
the
up.
tires
You
cool.
know what's crazy about that though?
But Grant would be like, nah, let him melt.
But it's nuts because I don't know why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because
You know that he does it.
well, and not only that, when I was racing my Mustang early in the morning, I was doing that to my own tires.
Okay.
It just I got caught up in the fact that I was enjoying the car so much.
Yeah.
I just
Let it go. Yeah.
I just forgot.
There's a few things I do that I tell him and other students and other people I've had because there's a reason behind it. For example, you always used to make fun of me like, why do you shake your shifter as soon as you start it up?
Mm-hmm.
And I gave him one time, I said, here's the keys. Go warm up Liger.
Yep.
So I'm sitting in my house and I'm like, I know he's going to jump that thing into the bush,
Yep.
isn't he?
Yep.
Fires it up. It's in first gear. He doesn't. And he grabs it quickly,
Yep.
but almost slams into the rose bush in front of my house.
Yeah. That's why. That's why you do that. That's
And
why everybody with a manual does
Yep,
that.
and I do that every single time I
Yep.
operate mine.
You know?
Oh,
But
it scared
there's
the
times
It only takes once to be like, oh, that's why.
That was
There's
the once.
times though you have to do that because you're not putting the driver or whatever in a dangerous spot. For example, with the track and spinning out, I'm like, you're on autocross. There's nothing going to hit. It's going to be fine.
Yep.
And exactly knew where it was going to go. I'm like, this is going to be fine. With the but those lessons will be so ingrained for you, you're not going to do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if you tell people, they're like, I don't get the point of this, or it's over my head. I just whatever.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, yeah. I understand people have to learn their own lessons and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, but I would have told you. I would have reminded you.
Yeah.
He likes to do that, and
does.
it honestly.
I'm
Maybe you end up doing that to your own children if you have them. You know what
probably,
I mean?
yeah.
I mean, because that's always
Learn
what
your own lesson.
That's always what he says, right? Is after we finish a project that's particularly difficult,
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Well, now you can tell your children when they have their car," or when now that you're being upgraded to power tools, you could be like, "Well, now you can do that to your kids. Make them only use hand tools."
Right. Yeah, I guess that's why, the whole point, I guess, was the longer you stay around that group, you'll get to drive more cars, you'll get to experience more things. I have been lucky enough that people will come up to me and hand me their keys. And I'm like, you sure? Like, really? Okay. To some really nice cars.
Yep.
And so,
I've just always go in.
Yeah.
I always go with the expectation. I'm here to drive my car.
Yeah, me
and
too.
that's it.
Yep.
If someone is gracious enough to do it, and I trust myself, I will say yes. But if not, and I don't know them, I will politely decline.
yeah,
But I will never
actually
expect someone to give me the keys.
I
Ever.
feel a little bit bad. I don't let a lot of people drive my car. I have let 3 or 4 people. Some of them have treated it well, others not as much. And some of them I feel bad because there was a particular person let me drive his car. Very nice guy. He's let me drive 2 of his cars. And I know he wants to drive mine, but he's 6 inches taller than me and I know he won't fit.
Yeah.
Because of my roll cage and stuff, the seat doesn't go back very far.
Yeah.
He will not fit in that car.
Right. And for me, the thing that I'm always so worried about, because obviously everybody drives manuals for the most part,
Yep.
it's the clutch, right? I'm still trying to figure out my proper clutch control and shifting. I mean, Jim has pointed out to me when he's at the starting line, he's like, I can hear that you're keeping the clutch in too long. I don't
yeah.
want to do that on some of these cars, on your guys'
Oh,
cars, because
I
these are
know.
expensive cars, expensive clutches.
Expensive
You know?
clutches. Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy that burns out your clutch prematurely 2 races.
Right.
You know, so until I get that proper clutch control,
Yeah.
If someone hands me the keys, I'm pretty much stepping away and saying
Yeah,
no.
I was really worried about that last time I let somebody drive my car. The clutch on his, actually, I'll call you out. It's Josh. So the clutch on his car, the GT350R, there is zero feel.
Yep.
It is.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
It's like a European clutch, it feels like.
Wow.
Well, I don't know what that feels like, but it feels like to me, like on my simulator, the clutch on that is just is spring loaded. There is no pressure to it. Like it might take 3 pounds of foot pressure to push it to the floor. That's what his clutch feels
Feels like that.
And when you let it out, the same. There's no, I don't know where it's going to engage. It just
The
does.
friction point is very hard to find on that
It
car.
takes 25 foot-pounds to push mine to the floor.
Yeah.
It's very stiff.
Yep.
And it is semi-light switch. Not as bad as the silver car. That thing is a light switch.
Yeah.
But mine has no feel. Well, it has feel, but it's just like on, off.
Yeah. It's very clear when it's there.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I was worried that because, and he said something about it too when he drove my car. He's like, okay, that's different. Like,
Yeah.
it is a very difficult car if you don't know how to get it moving.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I might not have a clutch left at the end of the
It's-
day.
And that's what I don't want to end up with.
Yeah. It's throwing people off driving Liger because, again, it's such a heavy clutch, but it's very responsive when it's there.
Yours is not bad. Yours is kind of what I expect. It's probably 10 to 15 foot-pounds to get that thing in and out.
Yeah.
But it's got a good feel to it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not light switch. It's, you know, it's a manageable clutch. I think yours is pretty good.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the
But you
actual...
get to those light switch clutches. Like mine's an 8.5 inch double disc clutch. The one on the silver car is a 7.25. I mean, when you let that thing out, you better be ready to go.
Right. So
Those are tiny. I mean, Liger's is like
This.
12. Yeah, mine's about this big.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did have one question, though, because like I said, I've never driven Josh's Shelby. I've only sat in it. Is the lightness of the clutch, does it have anything to do with all the modern features that a lot of those cars have? Because I know a lot of those cars have rev matching, hill assist,
Yes.
and
All kinds of stuff. And it has to do with the master cylinder, how much diameter of the piston for the hydraulics and all of that, you know. Yeah.
and I'm curious, even if you turned off those features, it's still not going to change the feel.
It doesn't
of the clutch.
change that.
Because
no.
I think it's
That's a very mechanical.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
You know, bringing back to the tangent real fast because we were talking about Corvettes and how it's driving those and whatnot. I was wondering if I can get your help thinking about this, Rob, because me and Antonio were talking about this the other way. Of all cars, I've never driven a Corvette. I don't think.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Apparently.
you've never driven mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because I'm stingy.
when I tell people that, they're like, "What do you mean? You're around them all the time." I'm like, "Yeah."
He's stingy.
You know,
Same.
but I don't ask people to drive their cars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
neither
know,
do I.
and so it's just okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, even when you ride in my car, your knees are against the dash.
Yay.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw in your car too, I was like, "Oh, my
Oh, yeah.
God,
Your knees
it's
are on the
tight."
dash. Actually, the passenger side is worse
not-
than the driver's side.
You think so? I didn't
Yes,
find
it is.
that
Yeah, it's worse. It's
Okay.
it's tighter on the passenger side.
bad. Okay.
So you could probably get behind the wheel, but it wouldn't be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's hopefully one that I'll experience one of these days.
Yeah, you
And
will.
that's just because that's the way your particular Corvette is built, correct? Not
Well-
indicative of that Corvette generation.
I lost a lot of adjustability when I put the cage in it. So the seat only goes back so far. I am not super tall. I'm 5'8" on a good day.
Yeah.
So anybody above 6 foot has a hard time in there.
Yeah, he's
I know that 6 foot can fit and does. It's completely drivable. I still have an inch back from where I have the seat right now. And the footwells are deep on the driver's side.
Yeah.
They're not as deep on the passenger side. The dash sits pretty close to your knees. And on the passenger side of a C6, the seat actually sits farther forward anyway. So it's tight. Yeah.
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
First off, with the C6, because the roll bar and the cage you got in there,
Yep.
do they ever make any that goes further back and actually, you know, more so you could allow taller people or like?
Yes, they probably do.
Okay.
I don't know. When I put this one in, I was like, I don't really like the way this is built. They
Yeah.
could have moved it back 4 inches
Yeah.
from where it has to bolt in,
Yeah.
but they didn't.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I put it in anyway because it was expensive and I waited a long time for it.
Okay.
And it fits me. I'm the one driving the car.
Yeah.
It fits. So I don't really care that much, right?
Yeah.
But if I were a taller person, I would definitely look for one that has a little bit different mount.
That leads to the second thing I wanted to say was seats. Sitting for people how there are. Antonio and his seats in his Mustang and why we went that route.
What seats do you have?
So we took out, we have S197 seats. So seats from his Mustang generation are in mine.
Okay,
2005, 2009 seats.
They have.
Do you want to say why we did that?
Bolstering on the sides and that kind of stuff, or they just?
No, for me, the biggest thing was the original seats in those SN95s. It's the headrest is like a little pill. And unless you actually extend the headrest above your head, right? If you crash into something, you're basically going to get whiplash in the neck, as I just gave myself whiplash by hitting my own headphones.
Yep.
So we thought of, well, can't we put his seats in my car?
Yeah.
And we did. We were able to find at a junkyard seats that they got some tears and wear and tear on it. We need to fix them, but they work for what we need them.
Yeah.
And we ended up actually welding the tracks from a SN95 Mustang on to those seats. So now we can just basically
bolt holes match up and everything else.
Yeah.
The biggest other reason we went to that instead of like a car seat or racer seat or whatever is because Antonio also uses it as a weekend warrior. He likes to drive it around.
Yeah.
And want to have something that was comfortable to drive around, but also a little bit more bolstered, gives you the safetiness from behind the head.
I also just don't really like racing seats, to be honest. Not a big fan.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't like racing seats, and I don't like on the Ford Focus ST, those Recaros. As a recovering fat guy that I am, they hug your love handles really weird, and it feels like you're being pushed out of the seat. And yes, I understand. I should probably lose weight. I am shaped like a propane tank, for God's sakes. But still, at the end of the day, the seats aren't comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus just the regular seats that I had in my Ford Focus, just plain cloth seats.
Well, those are all the things you need to take into account when you're building a car for you.
100%.
100% has to be built for you. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or wants or whatever. As long as you're comfortable with it, you're happy with it, that's all that matters.
Whenever I ride in my buddy Archer's ST, every time I hop into the passenger seat, I'm like, God damn, I need to lose weight, don't I? Just it's pushing so much on the sides and on my shoulders, and I just don't like it.
Your seat time shouldn't be miserable.
No.
Right.
No.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you've got to build it that fits your body style too. Because everybody can say you can lose weight, but you know what? It ain't that freaking easy.
No, it's
It's
not.
not like taking off a panel.
Yeah. 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 Well,
Off a panel.
that would be nice, right?
Well,
I mean, I could take my shirt off, but that's not going to do anything else.
The really great thing about the seats, though, is it proved kind of Grant's idea to concept, right? That Mustangs, especially those older ones, they're basically Lego cars. We can put really anything in them.
Yep.
To a degree.
To a degree.
And we can make it work.
Custom fit it.
Yeah. And that was one of the things where when I have to take my Mustang actually to be serviced because it needs a full coolant flush. I'm sure if someone in there, if they are anything about Mustangs,
know somebody that can help you with that. Or provide access to a place that you can do it yourself.
We've had this conversation,
Yeah.
and the only reason why I've never done a coolant flush at his shop is because his job takes precedence over the antifreeze because they use a lot of it, and apparently it's very expensive to recycle.
Do your own.
If you do it at your place and doing a proper flush, talking about the chemicals, and you're talking about not just a couple gallons, like 15.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
It's a pain in the
There's
ass
ways
to
you can
recycle
do it at home that work just
and you can, but like if you're paying, if it's only, but we looked into $200 for a proper business to flush, service, go the chemical route.
Yep.
That's worth it. And because there's sometimes you have to compare your time and what, for recycling and wrenching, whatever, versus the cost of another business doing it at a reliable job. If it was at an oil can Henry's, different story. We're talking about the full dealership getting that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that might be something that they notice. They hop into the car, they're going to be like, these seats don't go with this Mustang. And
They don't care.
They don't care. Well, some of them do. Yeah. There's always a few of the technician guys. Whenever one of them, for example, when he had my Focus for service, and I was telling him about that I autocrossed his car, and he was like, there's no way. I'm like, yeah. And we just ended up striking a conversation just on that because he was just really intrigued that I, of all people, would take this sedan and do that. I'm like, yeah. Because that's really me getting the most out of this car is by me keeping those RPMs high and just, like Grant says, just forcing that clutch in. It actually is better for the car.
Just use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just use it.
So last week, we talked a little bit about autocross events, how far are you willing to go and that kind of stuff. How far are you willing to drive to an event?
I mean, I drive right now, Shelton's 170 miles or so?
It probably takes you 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours if it's my time. If it's with Grant, it's anywhere between 5 to 6 hours is the entire trip.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Grant's hours are weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of those are, wait, I'm not ready. Wait, I'm not ready. Oh, I thought I was ready. No, I got to do this. Now I got to do that.
For the time being, I would say Shelton, in terms of that distance, right, from Portland to Shelton, take that distance and do a cross with it, east, west, and south. That's probably right now as far as I'm willing to travel to an event. Now, I know that some events are as far down as Medford. That might still work. I don't know if I would travel to, say, California, Arizona, or other states for that quite yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in
and
the
that
near
was my
future.
question. Yeah, it's like, how far are you willing? Like, are you that invested that you want to go do some different events, some bigger stuff to really see what's out there?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
there's some cool shit out there, let me tell you.
Yeah.
For me, it'd be more about let's say if there was an event in California or let's say Nevada, right? It'd be more about let's just attend first and then see how it is, see what the culture is like. Hey, great, cool. Next year, I'm bringing my car.
So here's the other question to ask, because a lot of time you go to events that I'm at, and one of the big things that is the bonus for me being there is I've got the truck and trailer. So if anything happens, we can always bring it home.
Yep.
Is your willingness to travel that far if I'm not there with that? Or if
a good
you
question.
say if an event you
Like-
don't know anyone and you're not sure if you can get your car home?
Will you do it on your own? Like, if you don't know, or you're pretty sure you're not going to know anybody at the event,
In my current situation, the way it is right now,
Yeah.
no, not a chance.
So then how far
you
would
need
you
a
go?
backup.
What's that?
You need a backup.
Yeah.
So then how far would you go?
I would probably still stick within, like I said, probably that Shelton radius.
Hour and a
About
half,
about
2 hours.
Yeah, probably within locally. Because even then, even if I had something as far south as, let's say, Medford,
Yeah.
I probably could get the car with, let's say, insurance, tow it up to at least one more major city up, and then maybe I could get a hold of Grant. And if not, at
Yeah,
that point,
you'd
pay
have
for
to
it,
call
pay a
in
tow truck.
friends. You'd have to call in friends
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
And you got enough friends around, we'd rescue you. But
Yeah. But also, I just think, as at this point, just because it's still me being comfortable with the car and obviously just traveling wise,
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, having a truck and trailer and just having that, I mean, that's such a luxury, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a great luxury to have, and I am blessed that we have access to that. Because, well, the nice part was, though, this year, because I did go to an event by myself, Grant wasn't there, so we had to basically pack my Mustang as if it was the truck and trailer. And honestly, for what we were able to do, it wasn't that bad, because I had one tire in the trunk, 2 tires in the rear seats, 1 in the passenger seat, had all the tools, including everything to torque the wheels. I even had a jack.
Yep.
So I had literally everything, and then of course change of clothes and everything. So I actually, in that situation, I did prepare to pack, for a weekend of me having the car.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And if
you
it would have
fully did
broken
it.
down
Yeah.
in that area, I know one of our friends there would have been like, "Here, just leave it at this spot, and then me and Grant can come back another time and go grab it."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So at least in that situation, it's just nice that you know people. But
Yeah.
me traveling to like California by myself, as an example,
Yeah.
probably not.
Nah, you'd need to go with a friend. But say you've got somebody going, say Grant's going to an event in California. You're like, you want to go?
Like Crows.
Would you do it? Yeah, Crows. Crows is a big one. That one's 14 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
But-
long ways from here.
That would be an example.
But it's a good example. Yes.
As long as it's not in the horrid summertime.
Come on, 120 is not that bad.
Look
Just
at
kidding.
I mean,
I'm
look,
kidding.
Look at me.
He's talking about
I'm
miles per
kidding.
hour.
I'm already like, I'd be super dark. I'm already.
Yeah,
I
no,
like get some color, I guess.
I'm kidding, but those items aside,
Guzman
is
will
that
turn
something
into
you would
Gooz.
do? I mean, at this stage, I guess my question really is, at this stage in your autocross career, your experience, is that something you're looking forward to doing?
At some point, probably yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, probably not.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair, and I agree. Yeah. No, that's cool.
The next step for me actually would be to learn how to even drive a pickup with a trailer, right? Because there's going to come a point.
Yeah, you can rent yourself a U-Haul with a trailer.
Yeah, well, and there's going to come a point where, as Grant pointed out, what if he's not,
Available.
or what if, God forbid, something happens at an event where he can't drive us back? I need to be able to drive that truck with that trailer back,
Yeah.
right, and figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
You just being able to do a lot of things is in this space, or any space, right?
Yep.
That's going to be beneficial,
Yeah.
and that's what I like. That's also another reason why I got into working on cars, because you're adding another skill set that you can offer, right? You have friends maybe who aren't into working on cars, but they don't know what they're doing, and like, hey, I can help you.
Yep.
You can offer that time and space for them.
You bet. So on the track or on the areas to race kind of thing, have you been out to Dallasport?
Once, wait,
Have you
no,
gone-
have we gone to Dallasport?
Dallasport, it's been long ago. You mean the ORP?
No.
No,
Dallasport,
Dallasport.
you guys have been too.
I've not
Okay.
been to Dallasport.
Yeah.
How about, have you done ORP?
Once.
Okay, cool.
once.
Yeah.
I've done it once, and then you went with me once, like as a spectator.
Yeah, that was no. I didn't never actually. That was my first
Was it?
and only time, which
Okay.
was ORP, and that was where I wrecked my. I didn't wreck it. My Ford Focus
Overheated
died.
transmission.
Yeah, overheated the transmission.
Oh, that's right. You did say ORP out there. So you did do a track cross day.
Oh, it was so much fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that was going to be my question. Have you done big track yet?
Yes, it actually was really funny because the first thing that Grant had warned me about that particular venue is there is sand on the surrounding area.
Yep.
So if you go off, he says you need to be very careful because you can dig yourself a hole and you can roll that car.
Yeah.
And on one of the particular, big sweeps, Grant's even at that station and he sees that my car is not steering where it's supposed to go. I'm heading right into the sand. Thankfully, I listened and I calmed, I let off the throttle. I kept the steering wheel straight and just braked enough where I could slow the car down and then turn the car and then get back on the road.
Yeah, he had 2 wheels fully off on that, and I'm like, this is gonna be bad.
Yeah. Well, could
I
be.
was
I mean, a lot of it
excited
it is sand, but there is pretty solid surface mostly around there.
Yeah.
But it was enough where after that particular lap, second lap, I was able to slow down enough to then go through it and then hit the quarter. What'd you call it? The quarter pipe?
Corkscrew?
No,
The half pipes.
the half pipes afterwards and just breeze right through them.
Those
and if
are
it
fun.
wasn't, like I said, for that third lap that I just killed the transmission.
Those are fun.
Yeah. Well, and just even the drive out there, that's a beautiful drive in the summer, hitting on
It is.
that freeway. You see, the cargo trains with and you see the sun, the wind turbines. It's just a beautiful drive to head out to ORP, honestly.
So, Antonio, you've done track cross, but I know we've talked about in the past about you doing big track. We've actually had a friend try to convince you to go on that.
Not a chance.
Was my next question. Why not?
Not a chance. Well, let me rephrase that. The only way I would absolutely consider doing it is I have to be willing and able to accept that the car that goes on that track, it may not come back in one piece.
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
You might have got that from me. Just a heads up.
I'm sure. Yeah, you freak.
But let me expand on that. Right.
Let me clarify first.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I get that a lot. People say that. And I was like, you are in control of your right foot.
Yes.
Now, yes, anytime you take your car on a big track and intend to put out some hot laps in whatever hot is for your own brain, okay, you are taking a risk.
Yes.
Anytime you go to autocross, honestly, you're taking a risk.
Yes.
But again, you are in control of your right foot.
Yeah.
You go to your own capacity. I hate it when people tell me, I'm afraid I'm just going to go, I can't control myself. I'm going to hit a wall, blah, blah. It's like,
I talk faster than that.
yeah, I can't even listen as fast as you talk. I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. I've been racing since I was 14. I've been racing this, that, or the other thing.
Sure.
You are in control of your body. You are in control of your brain. You are the only one, if you get to a limit that, okay, this is too fast, you lift your foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it helps out for Antonio's case that one of his good friends did put his car into a wall at a track on his third time out. And it was his daily.
He had gone on enough times, I think.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I was like, I wasn't like shocked, I guess, that it happened. I was just more like,
Yeah.
well, are you okay? First of all, start there.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's what could happen.
It could happen. The risk is there. I'm not saying it's not, and other people can get in the way, and things happen.
Well, and I will say this.
But as far as your own control,
Yeah.
be in control of yourself.
This is also where I was going to say, this is to defend your point, right? Because initially the reason why I wouldn't want to do it is because I only had one car. That was
That's
my
fair.
daily.
Yeah.
Now I got two.
Yeah, you don't want to break your daily.
So
That's a big thing.
at this point, if I did track my Mustang,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't feel as uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's not my main car.
Right.
Though a part of me would hurt me, I guess. And like I said, I hate that car, yet I don't hate that car if I did crash it, right? Because I would feel like all that effort that I put into building this car
Yep.
just got thrown out the window.
Sort of.
Maybe.
But you had a really good time doing it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But I think it's just my own. And once again, like I said, you just literally went on this beautiful rant about how people get in their own heads and they really shouldn't.
Right.
That's part of my own issue, right?
Yeah.
I
trying to
feel
get-
like I would do that.
I'm trying to get Grant over that because that's been his big thing. Speaking 100 miles an hour and gibberish that I can't understand. But yeah, I'd love to get you guys out on just a track day, just a high performance driving experience day, HPDE.
Yeah.
Let's go have fun. You get some sessions, you go out there, you drive to your limit, your personal limit, not to, the guy that's behind you's limit.
Yeah.
and you get to experience driving on a track. It's a good time.
I think there's also, for me on the track, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a level of decorum that you have to kind of follow.
There is, and I was very intimidated by that my first time out.
Decorum just means like there's rules, there's a way of doing things.
Yes. And I was intimidated by that. The only way to get through that is to go and experience. The cool thing is the people at the tracks running these events, they know that probably 25% of the people they have there are brand new and never done it before.
Right.
And they take you all aside and they say, here's the rules. They're pretty easy. Keep your eyes open. Pay attention. We're doing a point by. You can't pass anybody unless they know you're there. Okay? There's tons of ways to keep you safe, and it works really well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hearing some.
The fuzz.
Yep, it was my phone.
Yeah, 'cause that's the level, the decorum that at least for like me, because I'm obviously going to be, if I go on a track, I'm going to be slower, right? So
Yeah.
what is it that, for me, my understanding is if you're going to be that slower person, you need to be able to let people pass you. So you should always
Absolutely.
be on the right, so that way they can pass you on the left, correct?
Not
Or
necessarily.
is that just depending on the event also?
Yes, it depends on the track, the event, how they, a lot of them.
Course is set up.
Yes, and sometimes they'll say passing on the left only or passing on the right only. It depends on the day.
Right.
It's not always the same, but just listen to the instructions and do as they say, and it's all good. Point by is a super easy way to understand what's going on so that the car in front knows there's a guy behind him that's faster and wants to go. And that's your way of saying, hey, I know you're there, go ahead. Yes, you're right. There are rules, and it's a little bit intimidating the first time.
And
But you got to get through
rule
it.
follower.
Yeah,
I mean, I would-
got to. Everybody should be out there,
Absolutely.
because they're pushing their cars and this and that. But no, I highly recommend that you do it. Just get through that first event, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, I'm hooked." It's awesome. So anyway, that's my rant about track days. Everybody should go do a track day. Super fun. Super fun. Okay. I wanted to know, are you going to do all the Viper Corvette events this year?
I have some stuff possibly coming up this summer. That's the
too.
problem. I may be taking some trips
Yep.
out of the state,
Yep.
so I don't know yet.
Yeah, well.
I'm still trying to get that figured out.
Yeah. Life happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes racing takes a back seat as much as we'd like to put that first. Yeah. What else we got today?
Vipers.
Yeah, let's talk
been a
about
big thing.
Let's talk about the Viper stuff. You brought up. Did you send me that? I think you
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Okay. I will look for it.
Tony's
but,
been giddy about this. He's like adamantly multiple days. You guys see this, guys? I'm like, I want to see this once we're on the show.
It's just a lot. You'll
Is
see.
it on the drive?
Oh, I gotta open it. Okay.
The drive or email?
Tell me what we're while I'm opening this. Tell me what we're gonna
So
talk about.
because the Viper that I want, right? It's either going to be a Gen 1 or Gen 3, but Gen 2 is still something I keep an eye out. It's important to, I think, figure out what the prices, options, colors, and everything that is available out in the country. This is just right now. This is a very rough draft. It's a more polished rough draft of the Vipers that I've been able to compile for the Gen 1s, the Gen 2s, and Gen 3s. And I
This
think
is what is for sale currently.
correct, yes. With
okay.
even
Wow.
with also even some that have been, I marked specifically if they've been sold. Because there were some interesting things that I didn't know about certain generations of Vipers. And this is a really good way, I think, for me, if I do find the Viper that I want, right, I can use this spreadsheet to then kind of figure out my negotiating power. Because
Yeah.
I've already, for my Gen 1 Viper, I'll be very clear.
1.2 million. Jesus.
Well, you'll see
Yeah.
also on the side that it's a numbered car.
Yep.
But when it comes down to the Viper that I want my car literally factory. If anybody made any kind of modification to it, that's money that I am deducting off the price.
Yeah.
Because I don't want modifications in my Viper. Nothing aftermarket. I want my Gen 1 down to the freaking original 5 Chrysler Pointed Star cassette player to the cigarette lighter and ashtray that's in that car.
Well, that also brings up
How hard is that going to be to find?
yeah, that's the other thing it brings up is like, are
Can't
you
be.
willing to put in the time for a project to switch it back to that, or do
No.
you not even?
No.
You like, I don't even if it didn't have this, I'm not willing to go check.
Not
into
willing.
that.
Not a chance.
Wow.
Okay.
Like,
Stringent.
there is a lot of, for example, Gen 2s and some mostly Gen 3s that now have touchscreen stereo systems, or they have like a backup camera.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Was that factory?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, it was not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and I did make notes because, so for example, I don't want to drop too many names of brands, but I'll try to keep it brief. When it comes to the stereo system, for example, on a lot of the Vipers, right? I know some of them did use Kenwood, some of them did use Alpine, but some of them aren't exactly factory. Or, like I said, specifically with the Gen 1s, for me, it has to have the cassette player.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have the cassette player, I'm not even considering it.
Yeah. If you have that cassette, okay, say that someone actually swapped out to a different one, and you're not willing to put another cassette player in from factory. What do you do when that one fails? We've had it where those radios have failed on Vipers before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then what do? You're like, oh, it's not original anymore. I'm getting another Viper. Like, what for you is takes it so the work you have to put into it at any point, whether it's all original and then you have to, is that worth it?
I'll be honest. I'll say this now because I don't own one.
Yeah.
There is nothing that isn't worth it for me if I get that car.
So does that include the head gaskets on Gen 1?
Yes.
Those are those
100%.
fail.
100%.
And we know they fail. You want to have it what's original and let you fail, and then you want to replace that yourself?
I would have to, yeah, or get a shop to do it at that point.
Okay.
But I have accepted that with this particular car, this is what I want, right? Because
Grant Automotive will take care of it for you.
What's that?
Grant Automotive will take care
Exactly.
of it.
Because this is my dream car.
Right.
So
Yeah.
in my dream car, it's very built out a very specific way. I mean, the Gen 1s, for example, didn't have door locks, right? They had zipper windows. I need all that. That's very important to me. And people are going to be like, oh, you're
All right. Well,
crazy.
let's talk about that then. So your ideal dream car, would it be Gen 1 over Gen 3? Because you've said both. Quite a stark difference there. Which one is preferred?
The Gen 1.
Okay.
More than likely. The
All right.
Gen 3 is nice because the Gen
got
3
stuff.
is a modern take
More
on a classic.
refined.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more refined.
And that, this is going to sound crazy. This is going to sound funny. It's got a CD player.
Yeah.
I'll take that over a cassette player.
Yeah.
But the thing with the Gen 1 is it's just that was the car that, you
Sparked it.
you played it on video games. You had it on posters. That's what I wanted.
I mean, it's also the more raw version.
Yes.
Like,
man versus machine.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's visceral, that car. It wasn't refined, it used truck spindles and that kind of stuff, right? And the suspension and things were a little bit wonky on that car, but that's kind of the character of it. Exactly. All right. So there are different versions of the Gen 1. You've got the RT10, you got the RTS, the GTS. Where are you at? Don't care? Or
It'd be an
which is
RT, it
preferred?
would be an RT10.
RT10
the
is
RT10
preferred.
is still an attainable Viper at a decent price.
I'm seeing that. Yeah.
The GTS can be, but also here's where it gets interesting. With the RT, you also have to be careful which particular year, because I don't have any 91s. I have yet to find a 91.
Is that the first year?
That is the first year.
Okay.
But I have a couple 92s, and if you probably noticed those 92s, they are very expensive because they were numbered. They only made so many of those.
There they are. There's two of them. And yeah, 79,000 each. What was that? 93 drops it in half. 42,000.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, 42,000. So,
And then, for example, that one that's marked as yellow, and highlighted, that's the same Viper. Within what would have been, I think, maybe 24 hours, it dropped in price by almost $2,000.
I see that. Are there multiples on here that are?
That's the only multiple that I was able to find. Everything else is pretty much current as of today.
So one thing I want to ask when it comes to your dream Viper, because is that years go on, mileage doesn't stay the same unless it's a museum piece. And as well as you and me have talked about, when things don't get moved, they don't sit, that means more work's going to need to be done from. What is the mileage that you want in yours, and then what is every year as you get older and older, what's more acceptable? Another 1,000 miles after that, another 500 miles after that.
I don't know. I haven't really considered that because for me at this point, I think for me it's the price that I'm mostly looking at for these Vipers. That's why it's organized by lowest to highest.
Yeah.
Because to me, a good price for the Viper that I'm willing to spend is about what like a Highlander. It's like 40 grand.
40 grand.
About 40.
That's about your mark.
40 to 50 grand, right? Maybe 60 if it's like a very specific color.
Right.
Because actually, if you go to the Gen 3 section of it, there was, and I didn't know this, there is a very specific metallic blue that came out, and they only made apparently 7 of it. And it wasn't sold for that much.
Bright silver metallic.
For the Gen 3s.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Gen 3.
it should be marked as sold
Yeah.
on the very side. It'll say like 1 of 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there was some like there, and also as I'm going through a lot of these Vipers, one thing I didn't know, Some of them have like color accented pieces. So like, let's say your car is blue.
Yep.
Let's just say GTS blue. The steering wheel could be black and blue. So can the actual shifter column along with the e-brake, but also even the center console could be blue. Well, everything else is black.
Yeah.
And that's something for me that I haven't decided if I really like yet. Because for me, like, for example, the one Viper that I've had, the few Vipers that I've seen, for me, the perfect Viper, if I got a Gen 3, for example, red Viper with the silver rims and black interior.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's classic. It's
Yeah.
simple. And I like that.
Yeah, I like that
I like
too.
the simplicity of it.
Yeah. So let me ask you some very pointed questions. So we're going down, say, the Gen 1 road. I don't know what colors they offered. It looks like red, black, white, blue. Did they have yellow too? Silver.
They had yellow. They also had green, and they had
there's yellow.
and a purple, but I haven't been able to find
So
very many of those.
ideally for you, it would be a red one. But let's say it's a 95 or 96 instead of the 92 that you would prefer. But it's red. It's got the black interior. Do you say that'll do?
That can work, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're not going to be like super picky and go down. It's got to be a 92. Absolutely has to be a 92.
Exactly. For me, the really nitpickiness is just the OEM features. They
Yeah.
need to be there.
Okay.
And if a dealership tries to tell me that these modern features add value, tough shit. No, it doesn't. Not for me.
No, it doesn't.
Because it is a classic car.
Right.
So you putting in a touchscreen, that's garbage to me.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know?
Especially where these cars are at now. And so let me ask you this too. What's your timeline? Because I feel like time's of the essence
Yeah.
of these babies.
Especially
Like,
for Gen 1s. They're really
right now-
underappreciated cars.
We're at the bottom.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
And even if you look at the Gen 3 pricing, it's really not that bad either.
It's kind of all over the map. I mean,
It
it's
is.
everywhere, from 40,000 to 1.2 million.
Really the only
Obviously, that's details of
Yeah.
the car, but
really the only expensive, if you think about it, the ones that have really jumped up in value, right, is the Gen 2s because of the GTSs.
Yeah.
Those ones in particular are more expensive than the other ones.
And the Gen 5s.
And the Gen 5s, yes. But the Gen 5 to me is, anything after the Gen 3, I'm priced out. It's not going to happen.
sure,
It's just not going to happen.
for now.
And at this point, I'd have to get a Viper in like the next 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, I think you better
Yeah.
compress that.
Yeah.
Just the way the car market is going right now, it's low, but there's trends. It's not going to stay there.
No, for sure. If it magically does, which I don't think it will,
Yeah.
but if it does, I mean, that's kind of crazy because.
Yeah.
But also, I think Grant made an interesting point one time because when I was talking about, like saying from a consumer point,
Yep.
why would you buy this car for the price that it is and horsepower that it is, when you can get a modern, not Viper version of it?
It's not the point.
No, that's not the point. And he wasn't trying to argue that. What he was trying to say was that could actually keep the price down
Low.
to a degree because someone could be like, well, it's 500 horses or 400 something horses on a V10.
It's kind of like comparing
Right.
why would you buy a Cobra Mustang of the 90s when you can go buy a Terminator Cobra of the same era, and or go buy a GT500 or a Shelby. It's going to keep those prices down because it's not going to have the same performance. But there are people
And
who do
everybody
like
has their own
take.
criteria.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own criteria of what car they want. Like the people that are in the market, there's 139 Vipers on this list. I counted them between the Gen 1 and the Gen 3. I don't know how you compile this, but it's awesome.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to
So-
mention, I have anything that says, if you look at the site, it'll say no accidents. If it's got no accidents, I have a Carfax for it.
Real fast, so our listeners can see what we're saying. Can you go down and just explain the detail of this list? Like,
It's an Excel spreadsheet of Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 cars.
but more
Vipers.
specifically, it gives year, it gives the VIN number, it
Yeah.
gives the miles on it, it gives
Okay.
special features about it.
There
Well,
you go. You just did it.
The one thing, and the notations for the special features, by the way, those are things that I just point out if it's either non-factory or if it's something that I think is stupid.
Okay.
So you'll see like disgusting touchscreen on a lot of them because, okay,
So
Rob.
my point was, before I forget it,
Go
so
ahead.
you've got this great list. Now this is for your own personal use and benefit.
Yes.
And how many people are in the market for Vipers, any generation, right now? Like, just a guess.
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. So 139 of them available across the country. in just Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3. I would feel like this list gives you a little bit of bargaining power.
Yes. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to go for. And also, like, if I was able to also compile, for example, because I think there's one particular Viper, it's been sitting at the same dealership since 2017.
Oh, my God.
So that's
Which one's that?
I don't know if it was a Gen 1 or Gen 2, but I know I put it in my notations. I just don't remember where it was.
Yeah,
when it was.
That'd be a lot to look at. But
it was,
wow.
There was one in particular that was been sitting there for like a while. And that's all things that you can use to bargain.
Absolutely. There's a reason they don't want to sell it.
Right.
I feel like there's one thing missing on this list that you're not going to get from this list, and it's going to come over time, Antonio.
What?
So, as all of us know here, most Vipers have been wrecked. A lot of them have been, right?
Yes.
I think the one thing you're going to have trouble is, even if you have this list, how many of them have had wash titles where they've been actually totaled, wrecked, and fixed?
Yeah. There is that fear, right? Because even though you have a Carfax, the Carfax isn't an exact science.
When it comes down to that, it's going to be what I say experiencing over time is, I think the next step, if you're really adamant about getting a Viper on this one, is knowing the signs of what's been a wrecked one. Knowing, like, oh, this has been repainted. Because, like, sometimes they might crush a front bumper. You're not going to report that. Just put a new one on.
So there's one Viper, I believe it's a Gen 3, for example.
Yeah.
The way that it was listed on the listing is that the Viper was listed as red, but I believe the Viper was blue in color, or it was a different color. So I'm wondering if the car had been completely repainted.
Yeah.
Sure.
And also that begs the question, why was it repainted?
Yeah.
Right? Was it repainted just because they wanted to, or was it repainted because it was in an accident?
Yeah,
Right.
and then for you, I think that's going to be a huge tool because you might find the great one. It might be the mileage you want, the year you want, all that, the price you want, and then to find out, guess what? The hood, the $30,000-something hood was replaced in 2005 because someone was whatever, and they didn't tell you about it. But now it was a yellow hood that was repainted to red to match that.
My thought would be that if I'm being serious and buying this car, right, and I'm actually going to say travel to another state to go see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I need to make sure I am informed inside and out with that car, everything.
Okay.
Well, not only that, but the cars around that location versus, and even across the country, if you're willing to travel, they're going to know that, so that you can make a good argument as to, here's the VAX of this car, this is what I'm seeing on the car.
Yep.
You're doing a good job. Like, this is more detailed than most people.
The other thing I was going to ask is, you want to keep it all original and go that route. Some of these cars are reaching almost over 30 years old now. Mm-hmm. You know as well as I do, there's going to be gaskets that are going to be failing. We got bushings that are going to fail. Is that something like, okay, they need to be perfect when I'm buying this? Or is this being like, okay, now that I got this and it's still together, but it's not in a rough shape, but it needs to be repaired? Mm-hmm. So do you be like, okay, I buy this because it's got everything, but now it's got to be sent to the shop and everything fixed onto it?
I think so. I think that would be the correct course. If I can get it for the good enough price that I want, right? Even if it's got obviously bushings that are bushings that are cracked, because a car that's that old, it's stuff weathers.
Yeah,
I will go get it done. And at that point, that doesn't have to be necessarily OEM, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense to get the latest and best. I'm just trying to avoid a lot of the junk that people add to these cars. Like I said, like the stereo systems.
Yeah.
There's one, for example, where they put like subwoofers and amps in the back.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought that was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to trust somebody's wiring to see if this car was done properly? Hell no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's a turnoff to a lot of people, and some people are like, oh, that's cool, I want that.
Right. Or
whatever.
There was at least one, I believe it was a Gen 2. It had just a crap ton of aftermarket accessories. It was an RT10 Roadster that had just a bunch of GTS parts.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, okay, that's great and all, but now I have to go check and make sure this is a reputable shop that did this, or who did this, and why did they do this.
Or just pass on it altogether.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's too many of them out there that more closely fit the bill, that don't have all the extra whatever they've done to it.
Yeah.
Right.
You want something a little less molested.
I mean,
Well,
it's gone to the point, Rob, and like I said, this you might roll your eyes at me. It's gone to the point where, like, even if the climate controlled dials are not the original ones, I don't give a crap if
You
they
want
decided
original.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's fair. That's, if you're buying something like this, you have your criteria, stick to it.
Yeah.
I agree.
don't
Okay.
wanna compromise.
I need to know on this one then, especially if you want to keep it all original and go in that route. What about tires? If you're on the original tires, they're going to be gone.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
no.
no.
But no, hear me out. Hear me out. What I'm saying is, have you done research what exact tire you want? Because with modern tires, depending on even brand or what you go through, it is going to be a completely different experience on that car.
Yeah. That is something that I'm going to have to do some homework in, for sure.
Yeah.
But that one, I'm not going to fight. I mean, if those are the original 30-year-old tires, let's just say, no, they're coming off. There's no way in hell I'm riding those tires.
What kind of experience are you looking to get out of this? Because if you get something like, say, an RE70, or let's say a Yokohama AO52, and I know it does fit, that's going to be so sticky that car's not going to want to be out of control because it's planted on the ground.
So
versus like an all season.
That's a good, and I was going to go there too. That's a good question. What are you going to do with the car? Is it just a fun weekend driver? Are you going to autocross it a little bit, or are you going to park it in a garage and let it accrue interest?
For me, it's the fun weekend car.
Yeah.
It's the fun weekend car, but also it's the dream car that I've always wanted. So I do at some point want to autocross it, right?
Yeah. No reason why not.
If I decide to have children, because that's something I don't know if I still want to do or not, that's something you can pass on to your kids.
Yes.
And with these kinds of cars, like for me personally, like I said, this might be over dramatic. If I bought that car, to me that would I don't even care if I still lived at home and didn't live in my own house. To me, I made it. I bought what I wanted my whole life.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I love that.
I've made it. I did something with my life. I bought this car. Now, some people, like I said, might think it's very dramatic.
Not really.
To each their own. It's
honestly,
their opinion.
I think a lot of car guys and girls, they have that vision just like you do. This is the car this is the iconic, I've always wanted one. Yeah. Everybody, whether they speak it out loud or not, when and if they get to do that, they feel like they made it.
Yeah.
That is such a great feeling. I got it. I did it. I've always wanted this car.
I don't even know
and
how
it's one of those they will never sell. They're just like, no, I will never part with this car.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's awesome. That's the dream.
That is the dream.
Yeah.
That's the car that it's kind of why too, like to this point where growing up as a kid, I wish my dad didn't sell it. He had a 79 Monte Carlo and it was blue. And honestly, I remember my dad, we would drive together in it, my mom too. That car holds a special place in my heart because it was just a car that was with us for a decent amount of time.
Yep.
But then that's also, like I said, like I have this weird relationship with cars because I've liked them, not liked them, and liked them all over the years. I mean, and some of these cars I developed these bonds with, right? And to me, this is that car that's the dream car, is this one.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other car that actually at one point I wanted to get back, but this was like a pipe dream when I was a kid. We had a Dodge Caravan. It was a green Dodge Caravan. It was like a 2000 or something like that. It finally, crapped out, and my dad had to get rid of it. I think he sold it for like $200 to some guy who thought he could, build it back up again.
Yeah.
A couple years later, same plates, same thing. Saw it on the road.
Oh, yeah?
And I was kind of like, and I realized now what it was. It needed a new transmission.
Oh, yeah.
But somebody who has the time, the space, the money, and just the ability to do that, that minivan, I think at that point had like $150, $160 maybe. I don't remember the miles on it. But new transmission, car probably still runs just fine.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first cars that aside from the Monte Carlo, when my dad got rid of it, I was really upset because I loved that minivan.
Yeah.
And that's the bond I had with that car. And I feel like if I bought this Viper, it'd be the same thing. I would never, in this case, though, I would never get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have kids, it would be to the point where I would probably, in my will, be like, that steering wheel is going to get buried with me. No one else is going to drive this
Taking
car.
the wheel.
Yeah.
I thought for sure it'd be the shift knob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's coming with me.
Yeah.
Like,
funny.
Or if I had like a really good friend, I'd be like, here, take this car and you give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it to fall in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I really admire the amount of research that you've put into it, and I think you should buy it. That one right there. No, that one's black.
How often is this updated?
The red one right there.
I haven't had a chance to update it very recently. I would say like this whole dream, if you will, right, of compiling all this information.
Yeah.
Initially, it was over the course of a year. I was kind of like thinking like, oh, maybe I should start doing this. It never amounted to anything because I would just have it all disorganized everywhere until eventually I decided let's
Spreadsheet
it out
Yeah.
and actually do something with it. And now it's this.
Yeah.
And mostly because as Grant and I talk, every day that goes by, Vipers either can get attention or not attention. I remember during the pandemic, there were some YouTube personalities and channels that were talking about the Viper, and I was like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, they don't
Because
need the attention.
Everything, as we saw, trading cards, other cars,
started going up
Yep.
because people needed something to deal with in the pandemic.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
I did not want the attention to be put on these Vipers.
Right.
And they did. And
Before
price-
pandemic, you can get them for what, $25,000 we were finding them at?
No, so
low end?
you could, maybe. The lowest that we saw that was comfortable within the city of Portland, because Portland actually had a lot of Vipers. Now they don't really. I think it was 40 grand for like a middle of the road Gen 1, and it had like less than 8,000 miles, like nothing.
Oh, wow.
One owner.
Yeah.
You know, and at the time, like say taxes and fees, you're probably looking at maybe like what, 41,000 out the door, maybe like that. I mean, that was as cheap as you can get, and the car was clean.
And that's for like a pristine model.
Pristine model, and if we ran a Carfax on it, 9 times out of 10, it was on the West Coast. It wasn't even an assault state.
Nice.
So
yeah,
it'd be great. We would assume that hopefully, in theory, the car was garaged its whole life in a nice, climate controlled garage.
Yeah,
that would be a really good buy.
Yeah.
But
I think they're coming back to that. I mean, especially looking at this list, it kind of looks like, okay, those are reasonable prices. I mean, for 50,000 or less, you can probably find the exact car you're looking for.
yes.
Yeah.
And this is just, of course, like based on one source of information.
Yeah.
Because there are other sources that I still want to compile. So there's other websites, of course, that do broader searches.
Okay.
But also like Facebook Marketplace. How many people sell Vipers on there through like the Viper groups?
I see a bunch of them.
All the time.
Yeah.
That's something that you can compile from a private sale point. Like, what does a private sale look like versus, say, a dealership sale?
Gotcha. All these are dealerships.
These are all dealerships. There's only like a few that are marked as independent,
Okay.
and even then,
So, yeah, there's quite the market of Vipers out there right
the
now.
people who mark as independent, I noticed they have a very special kind of Viper. Usually, it's usually a one of something, or it's got very specific things on it.
Or they think it does.
Well, there was one Viper. This is gonna sound weird. I didn't know about it. It's a Gen 2. Apparently, it had gold accents on it, like kind of like a really like a kind of light gold, like gold wheels and kind of gold parts on it. And apparently, it was a very specific kind of trim.
For the Sultan of Brunei.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Ended up in Oregon.
It was weird because like as you start compiling this list, you start learning about all these things. Like, oh, I didn't know that these were one of one, or
Right.
oh, there's one of 7.
Sure.
And
Special.
actually,
Run.
the blue Viper, if you think about it, think of like a Smurf blue, but make it like a tad bit lighter. That's kind of what they were going for with that color. And apparently, there's only like 7 of them out in the country.
Wow.
And it's just, you start learning about all these fancy trims. And actually, the one, for example, Viper color that I hardly see very often is like green. Green has,
yeah.
and I know green was a
Which
factory
green?
color.
Which green?
So for the Gen 1s, it was a very darker kind of forest green,
Okay.
kind of more like
Yeah.
reminiscent of the Bullet kind of Mustang color.
Yep.
And then for the Gen 3s, correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
Sethany's Viper is a Gen 4.
Four.
So hers is a Gen 4.
Yep.
But I know that color sometimes either custom or it could have been an option on the Gen 3.
I saw one on here in the Gen 3s that I
Yeah.
thought was probably that color.
And that's also like one where you don't see very often. It's
No,
mostly
it looks
in the
pretty
Gen.
rare.
I think it was mostly in the Gen 4s.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was going to ask is when Gen 3 is when Vipers started having all the special editions.
Yes. There's a lot.
And so that's one thing. If you found a Gen 3, for example, that you like, does edition matter to you? Because, like, say you get the Copperhead or the Mamba or whatever.
So
It would be neat if it was there, but not required.
not required. And there's actually a few. For example, I think there was one Gen 3 that I marked that's a Hennessy.
That's what the other thing I was going to ask is,
Yeah.
Completely, everything was done by Hennessy.
and is that on the list for you or is that, like, off the table?
It's off the table, mostly because I don't
Cost.
really care about trims, to be honest.
But if you were
Well,
given a
does
good
it inflate
price,
the cost?
Yeah, it does inflate the cost.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I guess if I did care about a trim, which we've talked about, really the only one that I liked was the true Copperhead Viper.
Okay.
Because it had a slightly different nose, badging. That's a really cool kind of thing. It's more of an appearance thing, if you will, right?
Right.
'Cause I don't think they did anything performance-wise. That would be a really cool car to own. Also, just because the color, it's different,
Yeah.
right? But in terms of like just other kinds of like performance trims, not really. I mean, the car's got enough. I got a ton of power. That's a ton of stuff for me to learn. I really don't need a supercharged,
Right.
GTS with 800 plus horses. I mean, if that's your thing, good for you. Love that for you. For me, that's not for me. That's too much.
what about stepping away from the power and going for aero, like an ACR?
I mean,
You're looking at cost at that
at
point.
that point in ACR, I mean, what locally they're trading for 110 to 140?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Something like
It
that?
depends on what kind of ACR. it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. I don't actually know. And ACRs to me, it's
It's a race car.
like what do you call it? Jim's is a ACR.
Yeah.
Love his. I love that car. That makes sense for him. For me, in terms of comfort and the stuff that I need, just doesn't make sense for me. It's
Right.
just too much car. But it's a gorgeous car. It's just not for me.
Right.
You know, I just like a little more bare bones basic. And Ian Jim's talked about it too. He's mentioned like the Gen 1s. They drive like poo-poo. They're not very good.
Right.
I understand that, but to me, that's just like that's the ultimate car.
Right.
It
That's
doesn't-
what you want.
That's what I want.
Yeah. That original feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man
I think
versus
that's
machine.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Can't wait to see that happen for you.
I hope so.
Yeah. Is there a goal once you get your Viper that you want? Is there ever going to be something after that, or is it like you hit the peak?
Nah, I'd probably hit the peak, honestly.
Like you wouldn't want a second Viper, you wouldn't want a Gen 3, you wouldn't want then an ACR. Like
I don't think so. I think one is enough. One would be enough for me at that point. Maybe if I considered getting a second one, it would be more of like, well, does my wife want one? Right?
Right.
Give her
If
one.
you hit the lottery dollars and you got a lot of extra space and you're just like,
Yeah, because it comes down to space, right? Right now, as you can tell, the world is running out of space. And a lot of new houses and developments don't even have garages that even fit sometimes more than 2 cars.
I know. Yeah.
So like Rob, your property, it's a blessing. It's beautiful. You have so much space.
Thank you.
And I love it because this is to me what I would want. This is, I got the
It's
space.
the ideal.
this is when you
and it's away from everything.
Yep.
For me personally, it's what
this
I
is
want.
when you pitch the roommate thing, Rob.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But like in
I'm here
terms of
alone. Do I really want a roommate?
in terms of storage, you have that ability for storage.
I do,
And
yeah.
you have the means.
Yep.
If I have both of those things, hopefully I can have a nice place out in the country where I can have those things. And then, I could maybe expand my car collection.
Right.
But also in general, the cars that I even looked at, like I said, they're all American brands and they're built in the U.S. They're not very expensive anyways. I'm not looking to get like high-end Italian cars.
Right.
Well, to be fair, you've always wanted the 308.
I'm not gonna lie,
I mean,
308s are super nice, but it just,
I'm in the same boat with you as far as the collection. I mean, I've got too many cars right now, and I love what I have. And I just need to work on them. But like, there's a few Italian cars that, if they happen to be in the right place, the right time, and the right price,
yeah.
maybe I would do that. Like a 328. That'd be really cool. There was at one point I found one for $25,000, and I kick myself every day for not buying it.
Wow.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm just such an old soul. So for me, like another dream car that I would love to have owned would have been like a 50s Bel Air,
Sure.
Yeah. Or an old Impala.
Yep.
And turn it into a lowrider.
And everybody's kind of caught that stuff in the back of their mind that, like, if I found one for super cheap, I'd buy it anyway.
Yeah.
Like a Pantera for me, a Lamborghini Miura, which will never happen, a GT40.
Right.
There's a list of cars that, yes, I would, that's my grandiose, list of these are the ones I would want.
Like,
If money's no object kind of thing.
Yeah.
right, like another car that I would add to my collection because I just think it looks ridiculous is the Chrysler Prowler.
It is ridiculous.
I love it though.
Yes.
Love it.
And then we need to put a V10 in it.
Damn right.
Yeah. Oh, could you imagine that with a Viper V10?
That's what it needs.
Right. Well, and the segue back to, because Grant had said, he'd asked me earlier, like, how much research am I going to do with these Vipers in terms of accidents and stuff like that, right? Okay, there's another thing that we even
Much
talked
as
about
you
at one
can.
point.
Yeah.
Well, another point we had talked about, let's say that the Vipers do go up in price to the point where they become obscene. Okay.
You need to get it before then.
No, I know that. But there was another, like, doomsday solution where he was like,
All right.
would you consider buying a wrecked one?
Yeah.
And
Salvage title.
no, he was talking about, like, just full clunker.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Just project.
Uh-huh.
And it became down to space. But also,
Yeah.
I don't really want to work on a Viper and build it back up.
No.
Especially when there are so many readily available.
Yeah.
Right. Especially then. Yeah. I mean, maybe you go with the salvage title if they start getting obscene and like that's the only one. And you go and you look and you drive and you're just like, okay.
So I think
I
if
could
you
do
even
that.
go to the Gen 2, there's a couple, there's at least one or two that are salvaged.
I did see a couple, yeah.
And you've seen how much they're still priced at. It's insane.
Yeah.
At that point, why wouldn't you get in one that's not salvaged?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Is
Agreed.
I think people just don't want to travel. Me, for this Viper, I'm willing to travel to go get it.
Do you think
Sure.
there's ever going to be a point where your list or the list is going to dwindle where every year there'll be less and less Vipers to where it's like, now this is a chore to actually find one?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Not right now, but probably in the next less than a decade is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
these-
I mean, you've got 139 on the list that are just at dealers.
Yes.
There's at least that many private sellers, I would say, out there. That's a lot of Vipers for sale.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think over
When does
time
that list become 20, 10 every so often?
it might half in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
And then by then, the prices are going to double.
Yes.
Well, and right now, so let's see, 90, because if it's 90, let's just say 95. We're in 2025. That's how many years since then?
30.
30. So some of these cars are coming up to the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
When we start reaching, like, say, 40, right? Does now Dodge bring
Yeah.
that back and say, hey,
maybe.
to celebrate the 40th anniversary, we're bringing back, not necessarily bringing the
Special
Viper
run.
back, but maybe just bringing attention to it again.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, with an electric all-wheel drive one, sedan.
Stop.
But you know as well as I
please,
do,
yeah.
the
Stop.
moment that happens, though,
You're right.
Viper prices are going to skyrocket because everyone's wants a
Attention.
thing
Yeah.
that's not there.
Yeah, yeah. It brings attention to them again.
Yeah.
And it would just hurt me if they brought it back as an electric car.
Do you think there's a
I think anybody that's in the market for a Viper, now is the time.
Do you think there's a limit for where these cars will end up at?
What do you mean?
Gen 1 will top out at $100,000. It can't be $1 million car.
Well, there's already one that's $1 million, but then again, that's a numbered car.
Exactly.
That's a numbered car.
And yeah.
So
Right.
yes, they can.
The specialty cars, of course, yeah.
But we're talking
What
the
do you
basic
think-
Viper.
Yeah. What do you think that limit is?
I think
In,
probably like 70 to 80
say
grand.
when it's 50 years old, which is 20 years from now. You think 80 grand? I think more.
I
think
could
more.
Maybe more, yeah.
I think 200.
I could see 80, but then again,
I mean, there's high numbers of them.
Yeah.
But in 20 years, how many more of those cars are going to be wrecked?
right.
Yeah.
And that would be tough for me at that point. Let's say, like you said, many years from now, if they're at $250,000,
Oh, out.
I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, I will break my principles and go buy an Italian car.
So
yeah, yeah.
here's my thought process where they're going to be at. Think of the Ford GT when it came out, $150,000 for it, the 05 one.
Yeah.
We're at about 20 years right now where they're at, and they've gone up to on the low end about 400 to about 600, so about double their price, right?
Well, a little more if 150 grand, so 400.
Yeah.
It's more than double.
Okay. But they're not at $1 million cars yet going through.
Right.
I feel like with a Viper, realistically we could see the average going for about 100 and 125 at some point for a Gen 1. And I think it's because it's the first one, it's most raw, it's different than the rest,
Yeah.
I think though we could see the 200 figure ones, but for the special ones, the low mile ones that aren't destroyed, that weren't molested.
Yeah.
That were taken care of in Grandpa's garage that he had 0 miles on, washed it with a diaper.
Yeah. You think where do you think at 50 years, where do you think that'll be?
I think with those very low miles, I would say touching 200. But
Okay.
I think realistically, we could see where like a spread of this sheet will be up in the $125,000-$100,000
Okay.
range.
Yeah, I could see that.
Right. Well, and also, I would like to know also, for example, let's say even we go to the low mile, we stay low miles, and we know the prices are going up. Does amount of owners count? Because some of these Vipers have like 7 to 8 owners.
I think it does count, especially when you're looking at, like he's saying, the low mileage, low owner count,
Yeah.
right? It's been a one owner car. That's a big deal.
And there's only a few that I have that are one owner from across the generations.
Yeah.
2 owner to me is still fine. And
It
here's the
is.
thing,
It is.
I would never not buy a car if it was an 8 owner car. But also, I would like to know
Why,
and also where it was located. Right? Was it in a Rust Belt state? Was it only on the West Coast?
Agree. I do think an 8 owner car is less desirable than a 2.
What about special features options on that? Like, for example, specific colors or stripes.
Yes.
Like, what with that you've seen in your list has really been the cars have taken off?
One of the things that was interesting to me on the Gen 2s, for example, is some of those GTSs came with ACR harnesses.
Oh,
And
wow.
that adds value to it. And also,
Well,
like,
if it came out of the factory with it, yeah, it does.
yeah, well, and I think they did.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure because like I said, the Gen 2s I'm not as familiar with, but things like that, right? Do the stripes or any of the stuff, was it aftermarket or was it added by the factory? That's all adds value, and that's what gets interesting. I'm still not sure, for example, on those accent pieces, like I said, the colors that are on the steering wheel, the e-brake, and the shifter, and even the center console, if that is something that was done by the factory. But it makes sense, because it matches the outside color.
What about
think
dealer
it was,
options
yeah.
that weren't like because there's like
They
for
weren't
example
factory.
Yeah, well, either they were factory or the dealers had to put them on as an
Right.
option.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know.
Because the reason I bring it up is you look at the 70s Mopar.
Yeah.
A lot of those cars are beyond the moon worth of money because they were very limited option number 4-speed convertible in this color with the big Hemi.
Yeah.
Your Viper's going to hit that.
And that's where on those Gen 1s, I made sure to notate, for example, some of them didn't come with the zipper top or the zipper windows. They were just displayed as no top.
No top.
That, to me, takes away value from it because now I have to go search for these things. And then even Grant has pointed out,
I don't know. Well, hang on.
Okay.
Hold that thought. So if it was sold with no top, I mean, that's the way it was. That's the way it hit the street.
Talking about factory.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
I think that's valuable.
I think that is, but if I find out that it wasn't,
Okay.
then there's
and
a
it's just
problem.
missing.
It's missing that.
Okay,
I
that's
mean, 'cause
different, yeah.
Grant had pointed out that you said it was the Gen 1s, I believe, right? Where some of them could come with a specific hardtop. They like retrofitted a hardtop on the Gen 1s.
The Gen 1s are all soft top and black toupee on it. A lot of popular add-ons that people have been doing lately is they've been turning them into a hardtop coupe.
Yeah. The coupe looks funny.
It gives it like a bubble top,
Yeah.
like the modern Vipers, the Gen 5s and stuff like that. And some people love it and some people hate it. But when it's done right, you take it to a proper shop that integrates it in there. I mean, you're getting instead of an open top convertible, you're now getting the rigidity of a coupe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also the only non-original feature I think I would have to add to my Viper, and I think it's just non-negotiable, it needs to have a roll bar.
That you would add? That's a big...
Yeah.
I mean, out of all the things that you're like looking at,
detractor.
Yeah.
That's a
I
big
mean, at
mod.
that point, dude, I would just buy one that doesn't have all the factory stuff. Because, I mean, you're going to have to cut that car up to put a roll bar in there.
Yeah.
It's not like simple of like, a couple bolts. I
not
mean,
simple.
you're talking like...
No, I would assume that it's a whole thing.
So then why would you go with this holy grail, perfect car of everything and then just rip it apart?
I think it's because I haven't taken that like really into consideration of how messy it could be, right?
Yeah.
That's more of like an idea that I had that we talked about just because I don't want to roll that car. But you're not wrong.
If you're going that route, go with an ACR.
Yeah.
Go with one that's already got it from factory and put it into it.
Or I guess I would just, if I didn't put
just
one in,
not.
just learn how to drive the car the way it's intended to be. Because that's the big thing is, if I do get into that car, I'm not going to do stupid shit in that car.
Yeah.
That car,
It's going to be your pride and joy. You're going to baby it a little bit more. I mean, you still maybe get into it and use it, autocross it, whatever, but to a limit.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, the Vipers that we race with, none of them have, except for the ones that are obviously the ACR, there's no roll bar on them, correct? The ones that are there?
Not from factory. Like John's doesn't, I believe, and yeah.
I think his ACR does, though.
Well, probably
Gen
because
2.
it came from the factory that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's for example, in the Gen 3, there are straps behind the seats where you can hook up a harness to that on that one. But I don't like, for example, the supports above the seats are not roll bar. It even has a sticker on every Gen 3 Viper that says the features above the things are not structural roll bar. This is an open top vehicle. Drive with care.
I was gonna say, but everybody who at least is in the club, none of them, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have roll bars
Not that
either
I'm aware
installed,
of.
right?
No.
Well, and I think that would be like more or less. I was just worried about like obviously rolling that car and dying.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened
Right.
to these people, and they race their cars pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I think there's that level of just if I'm buying that car and also driving it, it's because I'm ready. So there shouldn't be that fear.
Right. Or even buy it before you're ready to drive it and then just sit on it for a while. Because I think that's an investment.
another thing,
It's an investment car. And where they're at now, they may be bottomed out. So one more question on Vipers, especially in the Gen 1. And maybe this is a Grant question. How many were produced?
That might be a great question because it depends on the year. Like I said, on the 92s,
I'm talking the entire Gen 1 run.
That I don't know.
I'm looking up right now.
I couldn't tell you how many were in production.
And that was from 92 to 97, is that correct?
No,
99.
91 to 90. I should have it at the very top.
Yeah,
left
Google
corner.
says
Oh,
Dodge
gotcha.
produced-
91 to...
Dodge
It says
says
95, but your list is showing 99's in there.
I might have made my
This is
mistake.
actually less than I thought. Says from Google says Dodge produced 5,988 first-gen SR1 Vipers between 92 and 95, so not including the 91s.
Okay.
So let's just say 6,000
Okay.
fair number is
All
being
right.
produced of them.
All right.
Let's say also from the first year, half of those were crashed. I'll find the article.
Yeah, I know you're saying you're talking from statistics or something that you saw.
From the first year they were produced, over half of them were crashed because a lot of people
Didn't know how to handle it.
from Dude in Blue, his video, how he described and how it was going. So a lot of our lawyers and doctors getting in thinking, no big deal.
Right.
I've got other cars, Ferraris that have more horsepower, and not used to the non-nannies and the torque coming at you.
Yep.
And most of them would, end up. So let's just say,
There were a lot, yeah.
let's say there's 3,000 left.
Sure.
And that's also 30 years going through it.
Yep.
That's not that many cars. We're talking,
Right. And that was my point to bring that up is like, okay, well, we've got a list of Gen 1s here at dealerships of 40 cars, roughly. Non-dealerships, maybe there's another 40 for sale currently on the market out of 3,000 Gen 1s produced. It's not very many.
No.
Yeah.
So, like we were talking about before, when does that number start climbing? Because the rarity of the cars, every year somebody else totals one out or more than one.
At some point, the Viper is going to be more rare than, say, an F40.
They will.
And we
get
might
there.
get there.
We will get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Ferrari doesn't let that happen to the
No.
F40. But
also, are people just maybe I don't know? Are people turned off by the fact that it's so?
yes, some are.
Turned off the Viper. The fact that it's the price that it is, in the amount that are out there, and like I said, I think there are some people that look down on Dodge. There are still so many at this competitive but also really relatable price point.
Yes.
Because there are just some people who just look down on this car.
Well,
Yes.
here's another thing.
Yeah, there are some of that. But there's also a really large portion of people that understand what that car is.
Here's another thing that might keep the Viper's prices in check. A comparable car to that, because this was based off it, is the original Cobra. And kit cars are so cheap, and being a big engine with no nannies and lightweight, it's about a comparable price to what a Viper is now for a good kit.
Agreed. And if somebody is on the fence about what car they're going to buy, I could see that being an argument.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what's going to sway them one way or the other.
Right.
But, you know, a fan of a Dodge, Mopar, Viper, period, you know, that's not going to change their mind.
Yeah.
Another car, either current market, you know, a Mustang GTD comes out and it's super cool and it's got more power, but that's not a Dodge Viper.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's what when we were talking about, like, hey, have you looked at the new new 350? I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I've looked at it,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay.
not what I want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got more horsepower, sure, but it's not what I want.
Not what I want.
Yeah.
That's the key to it right there, is it's not the same car. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got more horsepower, it's got this and that, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it's not a Dodge
Or
Viper.
or a lot of the impracticalities of the older 70s cars, right? Like the Cuda, the Roadrunner, and the Charger, right? A lot of those older ones.
Yeah,
Some people say they're impractical. To me, nah, that's a piece of history.
it is a piece
You
of
know,
history.
I
Yeah.
would love to have owned a General Lee, or owned a Roadrunner.
Yeah.
You know, or a Cuda.
Yeah.
Those are cool cars.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
They are history and they are art
Yeah.
and they are, you know,
And,
that's
you know-
the great part about it. And they're 50 and 60
Right, yeah.
years old now.
I want it down to the nose cone, the wing.
The big wing.
It's got to have the Roadrunner, and it's got to have the neep horn. I need it down to that level.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna mess with that, then I'm not buying it.
I don't want it. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That rant needs to be clipped.
Yeah. Neat, neat.
It's important. It's all
It is.
part of it. You know.
is. You know,
I just had a Grant Squirrel moment.
Yeah, I know you did. Go for
I
it.
know.
Yep.
V10 Viper put in the kit car AC.
Stop.
Cobra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be so ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, my
I'm
God.
down. Or put that Ferrari V12.
Because I know Antonio loves having proper engine swapped into proper cars.
Antonio, looking at you, bud.
I'm sorry. I don't. Okay.
You don't like swaps of
No,
different brand?
I do
Oh,
not.
we'd had this conversation on the show before. So you're anti, huh?
I understand why people do it.
You're
right?
anti. So I am bad person. I'm
Oh,
putting
he's brought up many conversations about your
just
C10.
Love it.
I
This is
understand
awesome.
why people do it. Right.
Okay.
Like LS swap. Right. LS swap makes 100% sense for a lot
It
of
does.
things.
Yeah.
I'm not putting an LS in a Nissan. Ain't happening.
Oh, I almost did that.
It's not for me. No, sir. That belongs in not a Nissan. That belongs in GM parts. That's it.
Yeah. Okay,
know?
so you're on that side of the fence.
Absolutely.
When we originally had this conversation, everybody in the room was like, "Yeah, go for it. Do whatever."
Not a chance.
And I used to kind of be on that same bandwagon, but then I opened my eyes to look at what's out there, because I had that 370Z, super fun car, handles awesome, just underpowered, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I either LS swap it, which I was headed down that road. I was looking for a motor and that kind of stuff, or I sell it outright and upgrade. And I ended up selling it and upgrading it, and I'm super happy that I did. But when I went down that road and started looking at it, I was like, it really makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that LS is a great motor. Parts are everywhere. Kits are everywhere. You can do it, you know? But yeah, I mean, I get it now. I get why people use that platform in everything, you know, from a Datsun to a Nissan to a whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, my loyalty extends to even the accessibility of that part. So
Yes.
I'll give you the example, right? A friend of ours, he has it's a Camaro. I can't remember what year it was.
It's 87.
87 or something like that, right? So the natural thing that people told him just to do, because the engine that's in that car is very underpowered and it's very
305
inefficient. Yeah.
305,
Just
oh, yeah.
LS it.
Yep.
I can understand, though, for me as a person, if I own that car, why I wouldn't want to do that. I want to keep the car all original, even though, yes,
Some people want the original.
It's inefficient. It's got no power.
Yep.
I don't care.
Yeah. And there's an argument to be had for the originalness and the nostalgia.
Yeah.
As Grant chokes to death over there. The nostalgia of the 305 and all the original parts. This is the way it came out of the factory. And to a super degree, that is super cool. But if you want to performance the car,
Or daily.
it doesn't work. Oh,
No,
you
and I
can
get
daily
it.
a 305.
Well, yeah, you can. But like for one of the things, let's talk different. A pre-war car.
Okay.
You know, getting out and starting it with a crank. There's some things like, do you really want to keep it that way and go through all that? If it's
No, you get something
or more
else.
modernize it. Throw a starter in.
But understood, for modernizing or reliability.
And I was going to say, that's where I have to check myself to a degree because I would be a hypocrite if I didn't see that side of it, because how many street rods from like the 40s and 50s, like you just said, probably have LSs in them.
They do a lot.
And it's because
Ford
it's just,
with an LS motor in it.
yeah,
happens
it's
all
more
the time.
efficient. It's a lot better, more power.
Yeah.
And it's modern.
And Ford never made that go-to motor that these guys could swap in. Like, they got
did.
they got the 5-liter.
No, I'm going to say like for a hot rod.
All right.
just hear me out first, okay?
Yeah.
If we're talking back then, and they never did, flathead V8. That was in everything, say, pre-60s.
Tell me that's better than an LS.
It's not. No, I'm saying it's not. But I'm saying
That's
at
what
some
I'm
point
getting at.
Ford had that engine.
Okay.
During that decade.
And they used them back then.
Yes.
But I'm
Now LS
bring it
swap
up
is
to-
the joke that you can literally do it to anything.
That's
you
true.
can. Yeah. That's just
hey, LS it.
And for current builders, right, it just makes more sense because what are you going to put a 5-liter in there or even a Coyote?
Yeah.
It's pretty decent, but
pricey.
But yeah, it is pricey.
Yeah.
And a 5.3 LS3 motor
Yeah. There
is less expensive and it makes more power.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because of the such heavy following that people LS swap, the accessibility and to be able to do it to your particular car probably isn't very
gosh.
difficult because it's
not.
probably been done.
A million times.
Yep. I would even argue that there's a good amount of people with my gen Mustang who are moving over to LS motors rather than the 4.6.
Yep.
Because the 5.0 is so expensive.
Yeah.
And the LS motor has been done
I
to death.
highly recommend you put an LS3 in your Mustang.
That would hurt me so much.
It would be amazing.
If it anything,
it would be so
if it was
fast.
anything other than Liger, that was actually something I would do. I've thought about that in the past,
Yeah.
but like
would hurt my
different
soul.
build that I've got going for that car.
For sure.
But
yeah, totally get it.
yeah, but if for whatever, if you're making it for racing, for more power, for street, like
Yeah.
don't take off the table because of brand. Take it off
So-
if it doesn't fit your budget, your time, or your
And
skills.
this is a question I thought of about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So the LS platform, yes, it's GM, and GM used them in the various models throughout the run, right? And they still put out the LS crate motors everywhere. If that platform, that motor, had been developed by somebody other than GM, not Ford, not Chevy, not Dodge, Chrysler, whatever, not a big manufacturer, would it be as big a deal to take that LS and put it in whatever you wanted to? I say no.
I say no. You know why? Because everyone does that with Hondas and Toyotas.
No, that's not.
swap
That's
it.
not why.
Well,
Is that motor generic?
yeah, because like we had the
I don't know who makes the K motor.
Honda,
Okay,
and it's in everything from Miatas
so
to
that's-
Toyotas.
That's not the same. That's just like using a Chevy motor.
That's what I'm saying.
My point is, if it were brand X,
Okay.
it's a brand X.
Sure.
Somebody other than a
third party.
major manufacturer. Yes, it's a third party motor. Would it be as big a deal to swap it into absolutely everything?
No, it probably wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't be.
I don't think
Can't.
so.
If it's not a big manufacturer, how do you able to get a hold of those
That is
engines?
not. It's a hypothetical.
His details are more on, are people so held up on the fact, like I am,
Okay.
where brand stuff
Yes.
belongs with its brand.
Exactly.
In this case, he said, okay, fine. Let's take this as this brand is now called X. It has no ties to the manufacturing world, but it's a reliable engine company in the
Correct.
situation. Can you put X engine in any car? And no one would care, I think.
I fully agree.
People care
Because it says GM.
It says GM on it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a GM engine in an MR2. I don't want to
In a
see
Ford.
it in a Nissan. I don't want to see it in a Ford.
Right.
That's just
So
me,
if it's X brand,
Yeah.
you can put it in a Ford, you can put it in a Chevy, you can put it in a Toyota, you do whatever you want with
Whatever
it,
you
and
want.
nobody cares.
Nobody would care. 100%.
Yes. That's the issue.
Yes.
Everybody's hung up on it's a GM motor.
Yeah.
You can't put a GM product in a Ford. You can't put it in a Dodge. Blah blah blah.
Which your
Yes,
answer
I
is
can.
yes, you can. In fact,
Yeah.
I just did.
Yes. Yes.
It's just to me, it's just I just don't like it. That's just me.
Understood. Yeah. And I love that argument just because everybody's kind of polarized by it. You're either for it or against it. So my project truck,
Yes.
I mean, I am using a lot of GM parts because it's a GMC with a Chevy Corvette running gear and a Dodge motor.
God, yeah, I know.
I know. It's awesome.
Which I was going to say, I am kind of glad though that a part of me is glad that you didn't give up on it and that because Grant was telling me that there was a portion of you thinking, well, like, these only come in manuals, and it's like people forget that Ram SRT10 was an automatic.
One of those Grant moments.
You know, it's
not going to be an automatic. It is going to be a manual.
Yes.
But
if you wanted to go that route, just know that you could.
I could. There's just certain ways that I'm putting it together to mate the two, my transmission and my new motor. I need some special parts
That come from automatics.
that comes from an automatic.
Yeah.
So going to be hard to find, but we'll make it happen.
I want to dive down this rabbit hole a little bit deeper because one thing that me and Antonio were talking about the other day, and I'd love to have your thoughts on this one, Rob.
Okay.
Is matching parts, engines with other companies, right?
Okay.
So one thing we got into an argument or discussion, whatever you say,
Might have been an argument. So
Yeah.
is
Heated discussion.
there are brands
Yeah.
like McLaren or like Toyota where they're a great car, but they use a different engine. McLaren uses the BMW V12 for the F1.
Yeah.
You've got the
partnerships.
Koenigsegg
The
uses
partnership.
Ford modular engines in their early models. You've got the Supra that uses
a BMW engine.
the BMW engine. Or you get to where BRZ 86 G8
Subaru engine.
Subaru.
yeah. And we're like, is that really a Subaru engine? Or is it more
Or is it a Toyota engine?
Well, right.
like-
and if it was a collaborative agreement, who put in what?
Right.
So-
where did it get manufactured?
Bingo.
Yeah. So how do you feel about those engines? They're not from the factory. They didn't design them, but they're
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort between the two manufacturers. I'm fine with it. It was, I mean, I don't care. You swap whatever you want, but somebody that does care that it has to be manufacturer specific. How do you feel about a BMW and McLaren or Mercedes and McLaren?
Yep.
Right? You got McLaren motors and running gear on a Mercedes chassis.
There was at one point in the 80s where Porsche built BMWs.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Porsche wasn't selling enough, or it was Audis. It was one of the two.
Yeah.
It was, and
Probably Porsche
Audi hired Porsche so that way they keep the lights on. And there
Yeah.
are some Audis that, it was Audi that says Porsche on it.
Well, I'll say, tell me if this is a good example, right? Because this is where I think maybe people think of it from a value perspective. When Daimler owned Chrysler, how many Mercedes shared the same engine, transmission, or platform that, say, the Chrysler and Dodge did for, like, what, a fraction of the price?
Tons of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does someone still say, well, no, I wouldn't buy a Mercedes because why would I just buy like, say, for example, the Chrysler Crossfire has a
different
lot of
badge.
Mercedes stuff.
Yes.
It's basically rebadged to a degree.
Yes. Agreed.
Where does someone say, no, I'm going to keep buying Mercedes because this is what I like and this is what I want, or just buy the cheap version of it? And that's kind of where I was getting when he's telling me that Koenigsegg, which is a company that, as far as, I mean, I don't know too much about them, but I know their cars are stupid expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Hypercars.
And you're telling me that they're using Ford stuff in it?
Now, was it Ford proper or Cosworth?
I believe it was a Ford module. I don't know. I'm going to have to look in that one. Let me look it up.
Well,
It
here,
was the first couple years.
Let's go smaller.
Yeah,
Let's go
understood.
smaller example, something we know we can confirm.
Yep.
The Supra with the BMW engine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Toyotas are known for reliability. They are known for that. I mean, maybe not right now with some of the stuff that's going on, but eventually somebody, hopefully they'll get it figured out. But now it's got a BMW engine.
Does
And
it?
BMWs
Or is
are
it made in a Toyota factory?
exactly. I want to know with that level. I want to know who was involved in the thing, down everything, because
But does it matter?
to me it does.
Oh.
Because if it's
You want pure through. If it's a Toyota Supra, you want Toyota all the way through.
Yeah, I want the efficiency and the durability of it.
Yeah.
I don't want the electrical problems and junk that you
come
hear
with
about
BMWs.
BMW. Or else if I did that, I would go buy a BMW.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. Recently, for example, I drove a BMW. It was an SUV.
Okay.
I can't remember what kind it was. It was massive.
X3.
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 Oh my God. I got in that car. I fucking hated that car. Sorry. I shouldn't have sworn. But I hated that car from the moment I got in there.
Yeah.
It had a ton of buttons.
All kinds of electronics.
And apparently, from what Grant's telling me, he says, well, this is what the customers want. They want these features. I'm like, do they really? Do you really want all this junk in
I
here?
think there's a certain level of high-end customer that does want that stuff.
Yeah.
They think it's cool.
Not me.
Fancy.
I'll tell you what, you know what's fancy for me? The fact that I don't have to roll my windows down by hand.
Yeah.
That's fancy for me. That's where I live.
I just got to think. It blew my mind. You're like, this is massive. I'm like, you haven't driven my truck yet, have you?
No.
But in back to the point, yes, I do want to know with the BMW engine. I want to know who built it, who engineered it, where was it built.
Yeah.
If this is all built by BMW, no, hell no.
Yeah, I think there is a certain level of customer like yourself that does want they want every part of that vehicle to be from the same manufacturer. They don't want, a collaborative effort between two different companies.
Yeah.
I wonder in the future, and I wonder in the future for that particular run of cars, right? The Supra that's a combo BMW thing. What does that do 25 years down the road? That car is still driven, traded, on the market. How difficult is it then to get parts for it because you've got the two manufacturers?
Yep.
We had actually talked about that too with the 86 BRZ and the FRS. How, depending on which one you get, right? Where are you sourcing parts from? Or we weren't 100% able to confirm if truly the FRS parts Lego onto an 86 and vice versa to a BRZ. We weren't able to confirm that 100%.
The engine might be, but then you got interior parts.
Yes.
And you got,
How much difference is there? Is it like for like? Did they roll down the same assembly line and just throw badges on at the end? Or
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Badge engineering. How far does that actually go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and like for example, the modern car right now that is a really good badge swap example is the new Dodge Hornet, right? It's based on the Alfa Romeo. I can't remember exactly what it is, but they have an SUV.
Abarth?
I think so, or something like that. They're built and they're both built in Italy, like side by side with each other.
I think it's Abarth, yeah.
And then it's like at that point, what do they share and what do they not share, right? Because they're completely different price points.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Hornet's
Absolutely.
basically like chump change compared to the Alpha.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's an interesting topic. I mean, I don't blame the manufacturers for doing it. They're looking to cut costs, and anytime they can team up with another manufacturer and say, hey, you've already got the assembly line. We just want to want to rebadge it. So I don't blame them, but I also understand your point of view or consumer's point of view of, can we just get something original built by one manufacturer?
And that's reliable.
But it's going to be more expensive.
Yep.
Guarantee you it'll be more expensive.
Yep. And it shouldn't have to be. But also, at the same time, maybe I don't understand the economics of that side of it. But also, the thing that I look for more, and like I said, it's kind of ironic because I own a Ford Focus SE. I want reliability in a car, right? Can we just go back to that?
Everybody does want that to a degree.
Yeah.
I will trade that all in
Yeah.
for every feature that these modern cars have.
Yeah,
'Cause
and that's-
most modern features I don't use. I mean, even Grant, when the BMW had a backup camera, and he's like, it's got a backup camera. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm turning around my
I
shoulder.
can see
I'm
back
looking.
there. Yeah.
I can see just fine.
Yeah.
The amount of times where I've almost been hit by somebody because they're staring at their screen, and then it's because they can't see the blind spots.
Right.
And then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Turn your shoulder."
Yeah, I can't do that.
Especially if, and it pisses me off even more, by the way, when it's people that are like as old as my dad that are doing that. If it's like a kid my age, okay, fine. They've been forced
Programmed.
to use this technology.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about someone who's in their 50s and 60s.
They know better.
They know better.
Yeah, that's valid.
And that's the part that bothers me is I will trade all these features, get me a reliable car. If I was into Toyotas, I'd want a Supra with the Toyota engine.
And with that, I'm a little bit worried. I mean, I like some of the screen features. I like the bigger maps because we have that stuff available to us. So I'm a little bit spoiled. I kind of like it. The thing that worries me is all the electronics throughout a car are all failure points.
Yep.
Yes.
And those are expensive failure points. So you can't, if you're buying a new vehicle, you can't get away from it. It would be cool in a way, and I don't know if I would buy a stripped down version of the same vehicle with less electronics and stuff.
Yeah.
Your Bronco would be a great example, right?
It is.
Would you
That's
buy
exactly
a
what I'm
stripped-down
thinking
version?
of. Yeah. So that's exactly how I'm thinking is like, would I purchase one without the electronics thinking that it would be more reliable? And it probably for the long haul would be.
Yeah.
But would I buy it? I don't know.
Yeah.
For me,
really
that's
don't know.
an easy
Because then
yes.
why would you do that where
Some
you already
people
have something
would.
that works already?
Yeah.
That does that.
I'm just an easy
Well,
yes on that.
I'm thinking if I were to keep it 25 years,
Yeah.
how much pain in the ass is that going to be to maintain all those electronic components?
That circles back to earlier in our conversation, though. We were talking about like fixing yourself. How you said fixing a circuit board. I'm going to put the $100 and go on that.
Yes.
The problem with us now with new cars is all these modern electronics are not cheap.
No, they are
Where
not.
it's something you can go, and grab this and put it on.
Absolutely right.
Well, you forgot about one other thing. Half the time you can't even access it because it's all licensed.
That's the other thing.
That
Because
is
there'll
true.
be a lot of it's
It's all programmed in. It all has to talk to each other. It takes a very special skill set to work on that
With
stuff.
an older car, hell, even older appliances, it's easier to find wire diagrams or kind of just figure out how it goes.
Yep.
When you start talking about like, no, it's got to access this module, then talk to this chip, and then
Right.
it's got to do this.
And that's the car stuff.
Yeah.
That's the car world.
Right.
Which it sucks. It's a little bit difficult.
And I get it. We are spoiled to a degree with a lot of the modern amenities.
Yeah.
You know, like the amount of people that I know, for example, that they got to have navigation in their car, and I'm just kind of like, you've lived in Beaverton and Portland for 25 years, you still don't know where stuff is.
They just like it. They're spoiled with it.
Oh, I'll tell you
Everybody's different. I
what.
get that.
I get it.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating, for example, when I'm talking to Grant, and I'd be like, hey, Grant, you know, I was at this place so-and-so on this cross street and this cross street. He'll be like, where?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, bro, you lived here your whole life. You still don't know where that is? Come on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time for me. It's already if I'm driving around and stuff like that, I know the area because of like been driving around. I'm not keeping track of street names or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll be like, hey, there's the business over there. I know where that's. I'm going.
Yeah, yeah.
See, I can
turn next to the thing.
But see, I can do both of those things.
I'm a street sign person myself. I always look at streets that I'm on and this and that. But we digress.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running really long. I want to ask you a couple of very important questions.
Here we go.
Very
Very important questions. 3 cars. I'm sorry, not cars. I always get.
I know, Rob.
Always.
What the heck?
Vehicles. 3 vehicles. It doesn't have to be a car.
Okay.
That you would like to drive someday. You don't have to own it. Just something you want to drive. A vehicle.
I also gave him the heads up on this like 2
I
days
did
in
too.
advance.
I did too.
So
Oh, maybe I didn't. I don't know.
I would do a F40 Ferrari. That'd be an easy one. Mm-hmm. I would definitely want to do God, it had to be like a fully maxed out ACR Viper.
Okay.
That'd be one.
New or old?
Nice.
Gen 2, Gen 4? Gen 3?
Newest as possible.
Say,
Just
Gen
newest as
5.
possible. It'd be Gen
Okay.
5.
Yeah.
And then third one, man, that's a tough one.
You said fully mod out one, so we're talking like with a 9-liter and
Yeah,
whatnot?
basically.
Okay.
If I'm going balls to the wall, I'm going balls to the wall at this point.
Sure.
And then,
If you're driving an F40, why not?
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's like I said, I'm not a huge Italian car guy, but that car, it's gorgeous.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous car.
Yeah.
And my third car, what would that be? Or vehicle, I should say, in
Yes.
general.
Vehicle.
Just so I can say that I did it,
Yes.
one of the Corvette boats.
Yes!
The
That's
old
amazing.
Corvette boats.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
just hella fun to just drive.
Okay. All right.
Especially since there's a lot of horror stories behind those boats.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. Why not?
All right. All right. Good one. All right. Next one. 3 cars. Cars specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That you would, and we kind of maybe touched on this a little bit, that you'd like to own if money is no object.
So it would be a Gen 1 Viper, of course, with all the features I would
Yep.
want.
Yep.
It would have to be a Celine Mustang, specifically his generation. So the S197 Celine.
Okay.
I want it blue, and it has to have. I need to have the part number, what number of what it is,
Oh, okay.
fully Celined out,
The supercharged version?
100%, not up for debate. Like it has to be this way.
Okay.
And then the third car would have to be. Man, that's a tough one because I think about concept cars, and then one concept car I knew I liked when I was a kid. I think they only made like 2, and I think Ludacris owned one of them for like a couple of months or so.
Mm-hmm.
It was do you remember the Chrysler ME412?
I do not.
No.
I'm unfamiliar.
Let me Google that real fast.
It was a concept car that Chrysler created. It's got, I think, a V12 in it. I don't think it was actually done by Chrysler. It might have been done by another company. But it was, the ME was
I've
their
seen
like
this.
play on the word Hemi.
I have seen this.
Ah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
Is
just
it a 4-liter V12?
I actually can tell you right now in just a second because I have it actually
It would make
saved
sense.
right here. It is a 6.0 Mercedes-Benz M120 V12.
Oh,
So this was
wow.
during the
6-liter. Nice.
Daimler years.
Yeah.
But
That'd be a fun motor to get a hold of.
yeah. And I think, like I said, I think they only built like 2 of them.
Nice.
But the ME412 is mid-engine with 4 turbochargers on a 12-cylinder engine. That's what it is.
Smokes. That's got to make some horsepower.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that'd be just a fun car. And I think, it's,
Yeah.
like I said, it's a concept car, so there's only like 2, I think.
All right. Nice.
I'm surprised.
That's
I'm
a
really
good one.
surprised.
That's a good call.
Because we've talked about this so much in the past and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because when you said Celine, I was
You
thinking,
thought something else?
yeah,
Celine S7?
exactly.
The
You
Celine,
talked about that.
I love
so
the
much.
Celine S7.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I've watched enough videos and heard people the horror stories of them. Right. I don't know if that's a car that I'd be
I'd
comfortable
still own
with.
it.
I mean, it would be fun to own. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But I just don't know if it would be a practical car to drive.
Oh, it's not practical.
No,
That's not
you
the
know.
point.
No, it's
Yeah.
like if money's no object, what would you own?
Exactly.
But that's no, and I get it.
Did I tell you I saw one of those, a Celine S7 at Beaches?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a really cool car. It's just different. It looks different.
Super cool car.
But right now, I will stick with just having the Hot Wheels.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. All right. So this question, I don't know if you can answer it.
Okay.
Okay. Just due to your work and whatever. Hard no. What car's a hard no? Somebody hands you the keys. Here's your daily driver. And you're like, nope, won't drive it.
I'm going to answer it honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish you would.
I don't think there isn't a car that I wouldn't drive if someone gave me the keys to drive. Because I would just, I mean, like, are we assuming in this situation, by the way, that I am owning it or just driving it?
I think it's you get it. You can't and it's the car you have the rest of your life as well. We've described it to people. Like
Yeah.
this is it. This
There you
you're
go.
having, and you can't get rid of it.
You got to drive it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't want to be seen in that.
This is associated now with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I can answer that then.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fair. And I understand it. I will answer, not for you, but, probably the car that comes up the most often. The bathtub PT Cruiser.
You know what's really funny is the PT Cruiser to me, and okay, I'm going to say it objectively now. Because my buddy Edwin, he had one. But I'll tell you what, the joke always was that car, people, made fun of that car. I was one of them.
Yeah.
But his car was less often on jack stands than mine and Grant's.
Oh,
It ran.
They still run.
And honestly,
Ran with every light and things falling off it and nothing
the
working
reason
right.
why
Yeah.
I can't actually hate on the PT Cruiser too much, because it's based on an old kind of hot rod looking car, and
It was
that
supposed
is
to be.
what I wanted.
Yeah.
Is an old hot rod.
Yeah.
This is just the modern take of it, right? I get it.
It
It's
was a
not-
bad take.
I understand it was. I mean, because I know then Chevy, because the story is
The
you have
SSR.
the PT Cruiser. The guy who created then went over to Chevy and basically took everything that was wrong with the PT Cruiser and
Yeah.
created then the HHR.
HHR.
HHR, which is a way better version of it. But it still, on paper,
Yeah.
doesn't look great.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. I get why people don't like it. But at this point, I have to respectfully say, it got us from point A to point B, and I drove it a couple times. I didn't actually hate it that much.
Yeah.
I just mostly like to rib our friend.
Yeah.
And shouldn't
I
have
just
done
don't
that.
like it because it's so ugly. That's my
I mean, if you want to talk about ugly, you
biggest
can go
beef
to
with
the Chevy, what is it, the SSR.
Yeah.
That one was
Agreed.
ugly. But the only reason why people, of course, slept on it, and now, of course, it's expensive, it had a Corvette engine.
That's true. It had the
It
LS
had
motor.
it had an LS motor, and people
Yeah.
slept on it for a long time. And then the pandemic hit, and people scooped those up.
Yeah. Well,
That was your entry way of getting a Corvette engine
Yeah.
without getting
in
a
the
Corvette.
Corvette.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still wouldn't have one, but that's me. Okay, boys.
Hi.
Good job.
Yay.
That's the show for
It is?
today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to ask people to follow us on social media.
Follow us on social media. Follow us on the podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple. On down the line. Whatever you
Whatever
do.
you listen to, give us 5 stars.
There you
Share
go.
with a friend.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
telling you, I got a great episode you need to listen to. It's episode 42 of Untitled Car Project.
Yeah.
You can find it on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, etc., etc., etc.
Good job. Antonio, thanks for being here. Thank
you.
Really
No problem.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having me.
sharing your insights into the car world and whatnot, and especially about the Vipers.
Yeah, of course.
Interesting. You've done a lot of background on that. So that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. All right. See you next time.
Later.